Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular scheduled agenda for City Council agenda for Monday, December 12th. If you could all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You all be seated. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Yes. Councilor Bouchard. Here. Mayor Boulay.
Here.
Councilor Brown. Here. Councilor Champlin.
Here.
Councilor Fennessy.
Present.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Here.
Councilor Keach.
He is excused, and we wish him well. Hope he feels better.
Councilor Krefik. Here. Councilor Mattson.
She is also excused, and we hope she feels better, too.
Councilor McLaughlin.
She's excused.
Councilor McNamara.
Here.
Councilor Nyan.
I'm present.
Councilor Pierce.
Here.
Councilor Rice Hawkins. Here. And Councilor Todd.
Here.
Okay, good to see you, everyone. We do have the minutes of November 14th before us. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve the minutes for November 14th, 2022. Council Brown, you have some.
Yes, I have three amendments I'd like to make. I'd just like to point out, in the minutes that I excused myself from the room during collective bargaining, Carrie Allen's name is actually spelled K-A-R-I. This is when she...
So I'm looking at the minutes.
Yes.
There are, you could work with me here.
Sure.
I'm looking at 18 pages.
The first page.
So why don't we start with, there you go.
The
Okay.
very first page. I was not present during collective bargaining. I would like to annotate that.
Okay, that's fine.
And then during the public hearing on golf carts,
What page?
I am going to it right now. All right, it is on page 8 of 18. I asked Deputy City Manager of Finance, Mr. LeBrun, 3 questions. I asked if there was a nonprofit rate. I asked if the golf course does any fundraising for itself, and I asked if the golf course covered its overhead expenses for 5 years. He answered no to all 3.
Okay, I mean, these are minutes, they're not verbatim.
Of course, I understand that, and they are not verbatim. I just wanted to
Does anybody
make sure the
else-
record is
Is
accurate.
that a motion? Well, I think that there's a tape is there, everybody can go
Correct.
watch the tape.
Yes.
Is anybody second, I'm gonna assume that's a motion?
Yes, and there was one more as a name spelling. I wasn't sure.
Where's that?
Her name is Carrie Ellen. I can
What
tell
page?
you it's during public testimony on I-93.
I-93, okay.
Page 12.
Okay, and then how do you spell it? Carrie Allen?
Her correct first name is K-A-R-I.
Perfect. Okay, so the first one, in terms of the not present during the collective bargaining, anybody okay with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Just need to make sure that she stays in attendance for the property acquisition portion.
Understood, understood. And then the name change on page 12, to change the spelling, is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm gonna assume, in terms of the change for the minutes on page, item 20F, which was the which is the public hearing on the golf carts. Does anybody want to change the minutes on that? Does anybody second that motion?
Second.
We have a second from Councilor Rice Hawkins. Anybody want discussion?
Question, Your Honor.
Sure.
What were the changes again, please?
The changes, and these are not verbatim, I asked Deputy City Manager Mr. LeBrun 3 questions. I asked him if there is a nonprofit rate at Beaver Meadow for the tournaments. I also asked if Beaver Meadow does any fundraising for itself, and I also asked if Beaver Meadow covered its overhead cost over 5 years. He answered no to all 3.
Clarification, Your Honor?
Sure.
Mr. LeBrun, do you recall making comments? I don't recall. I just want to make sure that everything's accurate.
I recall the same questions and the answers.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Champlin. Could I just respectfully ask, why is it important that
that these things be in here?
Thank you for asking that. Yes, and I understand that these are not verbatim minutes, but these are questions that I had been asked repeatedly by constituents, and as this is a public record, I like it to be accurate and show that they were asked and answered.
Follow up, Your Honor?
Sure.
I would just mention, Counselor, there are lots of things that I follow up on from my constituents over the last 9, going on 10 years. And, you know, I communicate directly with my constituents, and I think they have faith in me. I also would just mention that this is the second time we've modified the minutes for your comments alone. You know, I would think that you look at these minutes before the day of the meeting and could convey things to the city clerk. Just a suggestion. Thank you, Your Honor.
That's weird.
I would echo that suggestion, but also point out it is always related to the golf course.
Counselor Xander Isakis.
Thank you. This doesn't seem like a hard one. This is a common courtesy. We all come here to represent our constituents, and if somebody feels important that something that was stated in council should be a part of the official record and minutes, as long as it's accurate and happened, there's really no reason to vote against it or question a fellow counselor wanting to have the minutes accurately reflect the questions and responses that this body engages in. So I will be voting yes, and I don't think it's appropriate to comment on what sections a fellow counselor wants to make sure are accurate in the minutes, because this is what we're here to do, and this is our official record. Thank you.
Counselor.
Yes, thanks. I just would point out that, to my mind, the minutes are accurate. I don't know that accurate is really a word I would use, or inaccurate to describe the minutes. I think the minutes are very reflective, and in fact, on page 8, it says general discussion followed about the golf course's financials, et cetera. So to my mind, the matters that were brought up are already contained in the minutes, so just point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Isakis.
Thank you. And thank you, Counselor. meant no offense to our city clerk. I think the minutes are great. Sometimes there are points in the discussion, though, that it's important to have reflected for individual counselors or others to have reflected in the minutes. And so that's why we have the process to vote on them and to make any modifications. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing no further questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? The ayes have it, motion's adopted. Okay, takes us to, we have a resolution proclaiming December 2022 as Capital Region Food Program Month, and Councilor Champlin, could you share the resolution with us, please?
I will, Your Honor. The resolution proclaiming December 2022 as Capital Region Food Program Month. Whereas the Capital Region Food Program is an all-volunteer, nonprofit organization established in 1974 because of the grave problem of hunger in the greater Concord area, and whereas the Capital Region Food Program marks its 49th consecutive year in providing food for the hungry through its holiday project, and whereas refinements in the project are a perpetual undertaking. Originally, in 1974, the baskets provided enough food for the Christmas holidays alone, and evolved into providing enough food for the holiday meal plus up to 3 weeks of additional meals. With the changing landscape, the Capital Region Food Program has made another refinement, being piloted with the 2022 Holiday Project. Recipients will be able to select the food items most appropriate for their family, being mindful of their needs, including but not limited to food sensitivities, gluten-free, low sodium, low fat, vegetarian, vegan, and other dietary restrictions. And whereas the program has expanded operations to include year-round distribution to area food pantries and soup kitchens supporting their great work, which is accomplished by purchasing and distributing at no cost to the participating agencies enough food to provide over 5,900 meals per month. And whereas COVID-19 caused the CRFP to re-engineer its holiday food basket project and has evolved into the new holiday project, the Capital Region Food Program has continuously adhered to and aligned with its values, which include collaboration, cooperation, responsibility, mindfulness, safety, and community consideration. In keeping with these values, the 2022 Holiday Pilot Project continues to take proactive steps to maximize safety and helping those in need, while still accomplishing its mission of assisting individuals and families in need. And whereas the impact of this all-volunteer organization, community-wide effort has resulted in over 3,500 tons of food having been distributed to the food insecure in Concord and surrounding 17 communities over the past 48 years, with items purchased valued in excess of $3,480,000. In addition, CRFP has redistributed donated food items with a value estimated at $1,675,000. The combined value of purchased and donated food exceeds $5,155,000. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the month of December be designated Capital Region Food Program Month in the city of Concord, and be it further resolved that our community be encouraged to participate, contribute, and support the Capital Region Food Program now and throughout the year. Passed in City Council, hopefully November 14th, 2022. James Boulay, Mayor.
Great. Do we have anybody from the food program that you want to come up and just share a few things about how things are different this year than they were in the past? Welcome. Thank you. If you would just mind introducing yourselves, that'd be great.
Absolutely. My name is Timothy Grothier, and I'm the current chair of the Capital Region Food Program. And
my name is Elena Aloyas, and I'm the vice chair of the Capital Region Food Program.
thank you, Mayor and Council, for inviting us. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be invited into the chamber. Over the course of the year, as described, we have had the opportunity to take a look at data and take a look at the landscape throughout the community, and we made the decision to make a shift, if you will, to the holiday pilot this year. Elena has some metrics and some more information.
So this year, after all of us surviving the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to still run our holiday food basket project as pretty much we had in the past, but we had for years been looking at the sustainability. While we in the past would give 2 boxes of food that would serve the needs of a family meal, and the 3 weeks afterwards, we unfortunately saw a lot of waste that was happening with that. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to do a low sodium diet en masse on canned goods. It's not very easy, but we also have a really strong New American population that has some very specific ethnic food needs. So with our pilot project this year, we actually partnered with local area market baskets to do a voucher program in which the recipients would still work with our partner agencies, so they still would come to us from those that we work with that would be able to validate the need that they would have, and based on the size of the family, they're given a voucher that can be used at one of the 5 market baskets in the greater Concord area, and they could be used to purchase food and other items that they might need. If they don't need a holiday meal, but they need diapers for their infant child or a baby formula, they're able to use that. The vouchers cannot be used on lottery tickets, cigarettes, or alcohol, and they're able to be used through the end of January of next year. So if they are all set right now but have more of a need in January, we've tended to see some of the need increase after the holidays have ended. They'll still be able to use that. We're also going to be given a full report back from Market Basket of what items were purchased, and that will allow us to use that data to decide what we might be able to offer or change from our orders during the year-round distribution project. So if there's an item that we don't offer right now to our agencies, we can add that for them to get at no cost on a monthly basis.
And this year we were able to offer how many vouchers to families?
Just under 1,800 families were served through the program this year.
Thank you much. Have any questions?
Kudos. Thank you so much for all that you do and your mindfulness and how you change the program. I was fortunate enough to sit around a table with families, single parents who participate in your program and are very grateful, and they couldn't say enough good things about being able to have choice. Several families had dietary needs like you shared, and this gives them choice, and I think it's fabulous what you do, so keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Jim.
Well, it's a great pleasure. Thank you to the mayor for letting me read the resolution, because I knew your grandfather and your mom, of course, and you since you were little. But this is a great example of the kind of grassroots effort that we have here in Concord that steps forward when folks see a problem and address it. And I agree with Councilor McNamara. This is a great transition. Our community has changed. The needs of our community has changed, and it's great to see that the Capital Region Food Program has been nimble enough to pivot and to adopt a new model to help more people in our community. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just really quick, thank you, Your
Councilor
Honor.
Sexton.
Ways for folks watching at home or in the audience to donate?
Absolutely. They can donate right through our website, www.capitalregionfoodprogram.org. We have a QR code right on the website. We have a donate button, and we also participate with Amazon Smile.
Great, thank you both.
Anyone else? Just obviously, thank you again. As like everybody else said, I would just highlight one piece that was read, and I think it's always important to remind everybody each year that this is a all volunteer effort. This is not a paid staff this is a group of folks who live in our community who are donating their time to share to make it a better place. So
Thank you.
I think it's really important what you do, and I thank you so much. Now, if you make your way around the table, I bet you some people might be willing to help you out a little bit.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Just shoot right around.
I brought candy, I hope you can still take them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Manager, I do believe if you could introduce a new employee.
Certainly. Elizabeth, would you mind? So you'll be working very closely with her over the future, long-term future, I hope. Elizabeth Harrington is the new Deputy City Clerk working for Janice, working with Janice, for Janice. And she's done a fabulous job today. So I just wanted to introduce you and anything you'd like to say.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to thank you for having me as your new Deputy City Clerk. And for those of you I've met, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to working with everybody. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
How was your first election?
It was a great way to jump in. It was like an immersive learning experience. It was very fun, and the days went quick.
Wow. Someday she'll be jaded like, no.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, wonderful. Welcome. It is so good. I'm glad you could come tonight, and soon you'll be sitting here, so great.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you again.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Elizabeth. Good to see you.
Okay, we have the consent agenda before us. Before I take a motion on the consent agenda, I will simply say that items 19, 22, 23, 24, Councilor Kretovic recused herself from 19, 22, 23, 24. Councilor Brown recused herself. Item 29 was removed by Councilor Brown, be taken up at the end of the meeting. With that, do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Move approval?
Second. Made second to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it, the motion is adopted. That takes us to our public hearings this evening. Item 34A, please. Madam
Yes,
Clerk.
it's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title III Building and Housing Codes, Chapter 26 Building Regulations.
Would anybody opposed if we did the next one as well, since they're both just Chapter 26 and 27, the same building codes? Anybody object to that?
No objections.
So, Madam Clerk, if you would read the second one.
Second item is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title III Building and Housing Codes, Chapter 27 Housing Maintenance and Occupancy Code.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council, so I'll provide my comments first, and then I'll tell you when I get to the second one.
Yep.
The current Code of Ordinances, Chapter 26, Building Regulations, is no longer consistent with the state of New Hampshire building and fire codes. During the last legislative session, the state updated the building codes to 2018 International Code Council versions with amendments in fire codes to the 2018 NFPA, National Fire Protection Association versions with amendments. So that is the first item. The second item, very short, it's a basic update of Chapter 27 of the Housing Code and the Occupancy Code. So these really just to keep pace with the state changes.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions from the manager? All right, seeing that, we'll open the public hearing on item either 34A, 34B, which is Chapter 26, Building Regulations, or Chapter 27, Housing Maintenance and Occupancy Code. Anyone wishing to testify on either one of those? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 34C, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $20,455.30 for residential granite curb cost sharing and developer reimbursement for off-site improvements along South State Street as part of the roadway surface improvements project and accepting the sum of $20,455.30 for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, just very briefly, as you know, the city has a granite curb cost-sharing program. Payment of the granite curbing is received by the city prior to the installation of the curb. Those funds are part of the $20,455.30 that have been received by the city. You take this money in, you then appropriate it, and it goes back into road paving projects. Glad to answer any questions.
Any question of the manager? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this one? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 34D, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $24,960.24 as a transfer to the opioid abatement reserve and accepting the sum of $24,960.24 in litigation settlement funds for this purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, on October 6, 2022, the city received a letter from the New Hampshire Attorney General's office regarding the opioid litigation settlement fund distribution pursuant to RSA 126A83 Part 2. As part of the settlement, the city is scheduled to receive its third payment in the amount of $24,960.24. Two additional payments in the yet-to-be-determined amounts are expected to follow. I'd be glad to answer the questions.
Anybody have a question of the manager? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item 34E, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $35,000 to clean up abandoned homeless camp on city-owned land at 58 Lock Road and authorizing the use of general fund balance for this purpose.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, the city-owned parcel at 58 Lock Road is managed as conserved land with a conservation easement held by the New Hampshire Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests. The society monitors the property annually to identify any concerns with the use of the management of the property and to ensure compliance with the requirements of the easement. Based on the observations from the 2021 and 2022 annual monitoring visits, the society issued a notice of violations regarding a large homeless encampment. You can see those in your report. The city has a responsibility to remove the contents of the camp or restore the area to a prior condition in order to resolve this violation. This is not the first violation of this property due to a homeless camp. In 2016, the Conservation Commission utilized funds in collaboration with the General Services Department for cleanup. On other conservation land, volunteers and the city consultant forester and the new open space trails ranger cleaned up several smaller abandoned camps. In 2020, the commission paid approximately $5,500 for the cleanup of several abandoned camps along the Merrimack River adjacent to Gully Hill Road agricultural fields. Total cost for that cleanup was $11,000. The cost was shared with the Parks and Recreation Department. In the summer of 2022, the Trails Ranger spent 3 days, including 1 day with a team of volunteers to clean up abandoned camps in the same location. On October 5th, 2022, the Concord Police Department cleared out the inhabitants of this camp. On October 11th, 2022, the city staff visited the site with representatives from Clean Harbors to survey the contents of the camp. Photos, which you have provided in your report, show some of the contamination. Clean Harbors provided a cost estimate to complete the cleanup and restoration work. The Conservation Commission's 2023 operating budget is not sufficient to cover the cleanup costs. The meeting on October 12, 2022, the Commission voted to request the City Council appropriate funds to cover the costs in order to comply with the notice violation. That's why you have this in front of you tonight. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the manager? Okay, seeing none, anyone wishing to testify on this item? Mr. Swiker. Good evening, welcome, and please don't pull the chair back too far.
I didn't wear my boots, suck it.
Fair enough.
Maybe it'll be all right. For the record, I'm Roy Schweiker, and I have essentially two concerns about this. Number one, Clean Harbors is a hazmat firm, as I understand it. And why are we paying a hazmat firm to remove trash? I'm sure there's some small amount of hazardous material out there, but I think most of it is just ordinary stuff. Like I looked at the pictures, I mean, there's a nice tent, tarp, I'd be happy to go out and get those for free. And the thing is that, this is just an outrageous sum of money for that. And I have this is an Andrew Yang book. You may remember him. He was a presidential candidate a couple things back who was kind of trying to help out ordinary people and didn't make it very far in the process. And so I'd like each of you to think, and this is a silent exercise of your own, who are your 5 best friends in Concord? And you can't count your blood relatives, but you can count your spouse, so they're probably not a blood relative. Just think about that for a minute. And my feeling is that this could be done a lot cheaper. This is a lot of money. And this exercise from Mr. Yang, of those 5 best friends you just thought of, how many of them went and have a 4-year college degree? Because in this country as a whole, only 1/3 of people have 4-year college degrees. And that means the odds that 5 people selected at random having 4-year college degrees is like 1/10 of 1%. And so some of you might want to think about, did all 5 of your best friends have 4-year college degrees? In which case, now you're talking about you and your friends are among the top 1/10 of 1% in terms of, being stratified, kept apart from the ordinary folks, shall we say. And we have a city manager that has a $250,000 compensation package. If he had a compensation package in the city charter that he received the average wage in Concord, he would be getting closer to the $35,000 you're talking about spending. So I think you people are just out of touch with, ordinary people, don't just throw around $35,000 for no reason. We need to find a way to get this done cheaper, by volunteers, by hire trash can Willie instead of a hazmat thing. Or the second thing I'm going to suggest is that I talked to a homeless person. He said when he was asked to vacate, he was told to take all his stuff with him. I think the people that were there are the ones you should be putting up, more of the money to pay for this, or the labor to pay for this. Bring a city truck over there the next day. Say, anything you don't want to take with you, toss in this truck. We'll take it up to the incinerator and burn it. Now, all of a sudden, a few $100s, and you solve most of the problem. I think that there are violations of several laws here, and if someone walked into City Hall and stole $40,000, you'd have them arrested and sent to jail. But here we're stealing $40,000 from taxpayers, and nothing happens to these people. I think that we need to, first off, get the cost down so it's reasonable, and second, let the people who are responsible for it bear some of the cost. And once again, there seems to be this feeling, well, homeless people don't have any money. Well, Mr. Yang says the average disability check is $1,100 a month. That's more than I receive from my state retirement. So I think that some of these people do have money, and they could pay this. If we could have an ordinance that littering is illegal, and not only that, it's one of those things you have joint and several liability. Polluters can be charged millions of dollars without proving that they were responsible for a particular pollution, just they're one of a group of people. So when the police go out there, they can identify whom these homeless people are and start, saying, okay, you're responsible for this trashing this place. You should be paying into it. And if they don't have any money, well, that's fine. Then they probably have time. Let them do community service to remove this stuff. I mean, $35,000, I figured it out. That's more than the city share of the property tax on my house in the 50 years I've lived there. So all the money that the city has gotten in property taxes from me are being paid to clean up one homeless camp, and we don't know what these same people are going to be somewhere else and we'll have to do it again next month for another $35,000. We need to get this problem under control. And for that, I'm going to say we need a official campground in this city. So people who say, I have no place else to go, you tell them, yes, there is a place to go. And the official campground will have a trash disposal, it will have genuine restrooms, and it will be like any other facility. There will be a sliding scale cost to stay there. So I think that, what I've said, first off, you're spending too much on this. And secondly, you're not charging the right people. And I'd like to suggest if people are terribly concerned about the huge amount of hazmat out there, I'd like you to start opening some of these purple bags. I'll bet you a quarter to a half of the purple bags have some legally hazardous material in there. So maybe we need to hire Clean Harbors to pick up the city trash. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Swiker? Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone else who can testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, item 34F.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $45,000 for conducting illegal drug-related investigations and accepting $45,000 in grant funding from the New Hampshire Department of Safety.
Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, this grant will allow the Concord Police Department to fund overtime costs associated with implementing programs designed to address the opioid issue within the city and surrounding communities. There is no requirement for any matching city funds to be obligated for this grant program. It's recommended City Council accept and appropriate these grant funds from the New Hampshire Department of Safety.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the manager? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, item 34G, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $1,300,000 for the acquisition of real estate to be developed at 76 Community Drive in Pennacook for the purpose of establishing a new Pennacook Branch Library and Community Center, authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Hampshire to acquire said real estate, authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $1,300,000 for this purpose, and authorizing the divestment of city-owned property located at 3 Merrimack Street, Pennacook, together with other vacant city land located at the intersection of Sanders and Merrimack Street in Pennacook, upon completion of the new Pennacook Library and Community Center at 76 Community Drive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, just note you have a purchase and a sales agreement, supplemental one. You have additional public testimony tonight and a supplemental report. So I'll start with my report. 2020 facility needs assessment of the facility estimated that the property requires, this is the existing Pennacook Library, significant improvements to address a variety of code-related issues and deficiencies. Using the recommendations of the 2020 assessment, in February 2021, the Public Properties Division of General Services estimated the cost of renovations to be approximately $917,000. It's important to note that the estimate is nearly 2 years old, is likely understated given the current inflationary environment. In addition, while the said investment would remedy code issues, it would not necessarily improve the functionality of the facility for modern library services. A copy of the facility assessment is attached to your report. During February 2022, the Boys and Girls Club informed the city administration that it intended to acquire the Pennacook Community Center located at 76 Community Drive for the purpose of establishing a new daycare center and after-school program to serve the northern area of the city. The acquisition was completed on March 3rd. The Boys and Girls Club plans to develop a new 8,900 square foot facility at the property. Construction is scheduled to begin in spring of 2023. The facility would be completed in late spring, early summer 2024. The project involves demolition of all structures currently located at the property. Under the purchase and sales agreement, shortly following the Boys and Girls Club announcement about their facility, city administration entered into discussions with the club regarding a potential partnership to offer part-time library services at the new facility. The city and the Boys and Girls Club have had a strong relationship for decades concerning the Boys and Girls Club Bradley Street facility, which is partially on city property at Kimball Park via a lease agreement. These discussions have resulted in the attachment of the proposed purchase and sales agreement, which you have in your documents, between the city and the Boys and Girls Club. Key details of the transactions are as follows. The city space shall consist of 1,471 square feet within the new 8,900 square foot building to be developed at 76 Community Drive in Pennacook. The city space, which shall be developed in full by the Boys and Girls Club, will be a condominium unit at the property. Preliminary site plan, floor plans, and renderings are attached in your documents. Said plans are a work in progress and subject to change. The purchase price, section 1.2 of the purchase and sales agreement, establishes a formula constructed by the Boys and Girls Club. The price shall be the actual cost of the city's portion of the development, as well as a prorated share of condominium common areas, utilities, parking lots, and landscaping, and off-site improvements such as the Dolphin Street sidewalk improvements. regarding special conditions and restrictions, as part of the proposed transaction, the city and the Boys and Girls Club provide each other with the right of first refusal to acquire the other's condominium unit in the event of potential sale in the future. Both parties will agree to certain land use related deed restrictions of their current condominium units, which are intended to prevent future potential establishment of select land uses that would not be compatible with child care facility or library community center. Regarding city services, if approved, the facility will be used part-time library and community center services. The library services are envisioned to be approximately 15 hours per week to begin with. However, this could be increased over time. Community center services are presently envisioned to include a part-time senior programming, fitness classes, as well as rentals for private functions and community events. These plans are preliminary and subject to future annual operating budget appropriations by City Council. The capital budget cost for this project is $1.3 million. Presuming $1.3 million bond with a 20-year term at 6% interest, the projected debt service cost in year one is approximately $142,500. The annual cost for the debt over a 20-year term is projected to be $105,650 a year. Regarding operating and maintenance costs, we have an estimate of about $108,000, almost $109,000 per year, starting in fiscal year 25. And of course, that'll be up to whatever the City Council determines is appropriate. Projected annual cost to the city, although the facility will open in fiscal year 2025, recall we're in fiscal year 23 right now, the first full year of operational expenses and debt service will be incurred in fiscal year 26. The projected total cost of these items is approximately $255,000 combined in fiscal year 26. Regarding the divestment of 3 Merrimack Street in the city land at the intersection of Sanders and Merrimack Street, the City Council elects to proceed with a brand-new library and community center project at 76 Community Drive. The city administration requests authorization to divest of the current Pennacook Library located at 3 Merrimack Street. The city administration also recommends the city authorize the city manager to divest of the vacant city property at the intersection of Merrimack and Sanders Street. And of course, all this would be done after this project is complete to make sure everything's in place and all the services are provided to Pennacook. Unless otherwise directed by City Council, the sale of said property shall not close until the facility is completed, acquired by the city, and made operational. In addition, the city shall place deed restrictions on 3 Merrimack Street and associated vacant parcel requiring payment of property taxes. Further, recognizing the historic significance of 3 Merrimack Street, the deed restrictions would also be placed on said property to ensure the building shall be preserved in perpetuity until such time as the building suffers a casualty rendering it infeasible to repair or rebuild. Potential benefits to the community are as follows. The project will result in a new, modern, fully coded, compliant facility well-equipped to facilitate delivery of library and community center services to residents of Pennacook Village, as well as the northern areas of West and East Concord. This new facility will be approximately 1,471 square feet, which is larger than the 1,080 square feet used to provide library services at 3 Merrimack Street for the past 75 years. The new branch library community center will be adjacent to Rolfe Park, as well as the Merrimack Valley School District campus. Proximity provided for potential opportunities for programmatic synergies with these facilities and entities. Co-locating the branch library and community center with the Boys and Girls Club could also result in programmatic synergies, which could have the potential of mutually beneficial to the city, the Boys and Girls Club, and respective clienteles. The city involvement with this project furthers the mission of the goals of the Boys and Girls Club and creates improved opportunities for their clients. 76 Community Drive property is tax exempt. Therefore, there'll be no loss of tax revenues to the property, to the community resulting from the city acquisition of the portion of the property of the new branch library and the community center. And by relocating the Pennacook Branch Library from 3 Merrimack to 76 Community Drive will allow further development of 3 Merrimack Street, thus keeping the property in productive use and returning it to the tax rolls. Additional proceeds from the sale of 3 Merrimack Street may reduce the cost of bonding required for the new facility. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. City Manager, you had said that the city portion would be 1,471 square feet, and I believe that includes the storage room, the janitor closet, the two bathrooms and a kitchenette, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell me, I'm looking at the floor plan now, and they're isolated to the northeast corner of the section. What is the square footage of the area that is not those items, those closets? Because obviously those would not be used for programming.
If you have this, you
I
should be able
have-
to see it right there.
I
if you it.
have the floor plan, but it doesn't show me, it doesn't break it up into this larger area. What is the square footage of that? Do we have that information?
You have that, Dave? Do you have it, Matt?
Apologies for the delay. The design team for the project's actually here. They're telling us it's somewhere in the range of about 850 square feet, a little bit more than that.
Maybe else, Councilor Pierce.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report, Mr. Manager. Just to bring it down a little bit on the dollars, we're looking at $917,000 to renovate the existing building that perhaps would still be inadequate for a multi-use purpose. You're looking at $1.3 million for a new multi-purpose room. You would subtract from that the sale of 3 Merrimack Street in the adjacent piece of property, which would lower the overall costs. Plus, it would put that building, if it were to be sold to a private entity, it would put that building back on the tax rolls. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Brown?
Thank you. I was just wondering if, Mr. City Manager, you could let me know, when was the maintenance, what kind of maintenance has been done on the current 3 Merrimack location? I know it's over 100, it was built in 1899. Has we been maintaining it as needed?
I don't have that information.
One more follow-up?
Sure.
I know that the 3 Merrimack is used for programming. Was there any programming done in the upstairs, which is the same floor plan, the same square footage as the first floor, 1,080 feet?
I don't, there was? Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Chaplin?
Thank you. Mr. Spell, do you have a sense of how much of the floor space in the current library is accessible to people of all abilities?
How much of the floor space in the current library?
How much of the floor space on the first and second floor of the current library building are available to people of all
Come on up.
abilities?
Librarian to come up and explain.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. So the first floor at 3 Merrimack right now, that's really the only, ADA compliant, I guess, area. So it's a pretty small footprint there, as you know, you've been on the first floor many times. The second floor, if you haven't been upstairs, you kind of have the creaky steps, you kind of have to go up and around. No elevator, so that's obviously a big challenge right now. So really, that's kind of our primary library right now, is it's really the first floor. We've kind of, that's the base of operations.
Follow up? So if I came to an event at the current library building, and I brought my my mother in a wheelchair, or my child in a wheelchair, or my father who has to use a walker, you're saying that they couldn't get up to the second floor?
They would have difficulty. It's a huge problem. So like when we used to have a program on the second floor, you'd see strollers kind of piled up downstairs as people would have to then bring their kids and their belongings upstairs.
Okay. Follow up?
Please.
So how much of the floor space of the proposed co-op at the community center is accessible to people of all abilities?
The projected new space?
Correct.
It would be a similar model to the Heights Branch Library right now, so the whole floor would be ADA compliant, so it would be a huge advantage, improvement. Yeah.
Thank you. Follow up? Do you have a sense of, I know that Councilor Brown was concerned about the apples to apples on the floor space estimate and the increase in floor space availability. Do the numbers used in this report for the current building, does that include storage? janitor's space and things of that nature?
Of the current 3 Merrimack?
Yes.
I'm not sure. There is 2 restrooms downstairs. There is a small closet, janitor closet, so kind of a similar outfit, but yeah, I'm not sure what the square foot difference would be compared to, the new potential space.
Follow up, Your Honor? Do you have adequate storage space in the current building for the needs of the library?
If you count the upstairs, yeah. But ideally, we'd have something, again, on the first floor, ranch-style, ADA compliant, just to make it more advantageous and more efficient.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
That's quite a bit. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Fahey, for coming up and talking. And since you're here, I'm going to ask, if I'm looking through the numbers, just the accessibility portion of the existing building, you have $150,000 that was designated in the report to bring us up to compliance only on the handicap ramp replacement. And then there's an additional $84,000 for ramps, handrails, counters, and accessible laboratories. So we're looking at just $234,000 to make it accessible to all members of our community, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you have something to say?
I just want to add, one thing to keep in mind, it's, there is a whole element here to try to make it available to customers, but you have staff too. So essentially, if we're going to start hiring people who are not handicapped, who have no disabilities, if that's what our rule is going to be going forward, then, which I don't think it should be, I think we should have a facility that all staff can work at. At this type of facility what we have at 3 Merrimack, we don't have that now, so.
Ms. Pierce.
Do you like this plan?
Yes, I think it's advantageous. I think the accessibility is a huge challenge right now. It improves that. Parking is a huge challenge right now. We don't have any parking tied to the current 3 Merrimack. So the ability to do that in a programmable space, we have the built-in audience with the clientele in the building, as well as the park across the street, the school down the road. So it's a more advantageous location, I think, overall compared to where we're at.
Thank
So
you.
growth potential is high.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Councilor Brown, then Councilor Craig.
Thank you. Mr. Fabian, we had met earlier last week, and you had said that you've been on for 8 years and you've been kind of looking for a new space for this library during that entire time. Is this the ideal amount of space that Pennacook needs? I remember we talked about this at 3 Merrimack. What is the ideal, when you were going around for 8 years looking at new spaces, what were you asking and looking for?
I mean, honestly, as I'd mentioned, I wouldn't say that there's an exact size. Of course, we always want bigger, no question about it. If there's a blank check, we're going to go for maximize as much as what we can do. But really, it's more the stylistically what we need. We need it to be efficient, ADA compliant, parking. We need it to be attractive for all patron bases, so they can all come in and they can utilize the space. So really from there, then it just becomes what can we do with the space. We got creative with the Heights Branch Library. We know that model works. So that kind of is kind of how we ended up there. But I wouldn't say there's a one-size-fits-all, ideal size. But certainly, the more the better for us.
Just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
So was there a subcommittee created to help you identify the needs of the library and the type of, how to find a new library? I mean, you're covering 3 branches. That's a lot of work to run around and look at spaces.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say it was an exact subcommittee, but I mean, I have the city administration, the city manager, Matt Walsh has been involved, general services, any of these that I need to tap into and say, hey, I'm looking at a property. Can you give me your thoughts on this? What do we think? We have to renovate, or we have to do this, or can it work here? So there's a whole team that I work with that I can just pick up the phone, and they're great for that.
Thank you.
Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, apologies that I called you Mr. Fahey instead of Mr. Fabian, but there actually is a Todd Fahey in our community, so you both get an apology. Your names are so close. What I wanted to ask you was, in regards to the electric bike that we have for the delivery of books, do you foresee this as a possibility to expand our area out and have that at the Pennacook branch location so that we can get more visibility? And it's a 2-part question, my apologies. Mm-hmm. There was some pushback from the community in that area previously when we looked at mobile books, and is there a way to start moving into that thought that we can be more serving in the community because we have the mobility with the electric bike, as well as a new facility and new interest in reading in Pennacook.
Yeah, so the pandemic gave us an opportunity to go more out into the community. So that's really kind of been a focus of ours, is to get programming out into where you are. Instead of having people have to come to the library, everyone had a different comfort level with the pandemic and social distancing, and kind of, we're still getting people back now that said they haven't been in since the pandemic. So as we're trying to do this, going to parks and trailheads and different events in the community, the e-bikes sort of, came to fruition through that. They will definitely be in Pennacook. We'll have some sort of rotation schedule as spring comes along. And ideally, we'd have some back-to-back events out there. We can kind of keep them out there for a few days, and then after we, do something in Pennacook, they'll end up in the Heights, or they'll end up, in West Concord. So yeah, they'll be all over the place. You'll get to see them. We got some nice trial runs in this fall. The bikes kind of came in late, but we're really, I think they're super positive. A lot of great feedback from patrons about them. When they see them, they're kind of like, what are those, and how do I get one? No, the public can't ride them. Everyone says, can I take a turn? I'm like, I can't do that for a lot of liability reasons, but perhaps down the road we can get to that point.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We can bring you back when we do the action phase. So right now, though, I want to move to the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify on this item?
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Jerry Clemens. I'm the current chair of the Board of Trustees for the library. I don't have a big speech for you tonight, but I basically wanted to let you know that we voted in terms of whether or not we want to throw our support behind this, and we unanimously do. So to the extent that there's any question among any members of the City Council about whether or not the Board of Trustees for the library supports this endeavor, this resolution, we affirmatively do. If the council has questions, as a representative from the board, I'm here. I believe we have at least one other member here. We are more than happy to answer the questions that the council may have. But I'd ask you to ask yourselves, what is a library and what's a community space? This is a place that grounds our community. It's not just a library, but this is a place. And it's important that we reflect and we provide services to our entire community. There are aspects of our community out in the Pennacook region that this would benefit incredibly. So I ask for your support when you consider this. And to the extent that you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comment. Does anybody have any questions? Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and testifying before us tonight. There's been some questions raised tonight regarding, size and programming and whatnot. Did the Board of Trustees consider all of those factors before taking their vote to support this plan?
So discussion about that, I don't, unfortunately, as much as we might like to weigh in on the size of the project, that's not really for us to decide. That's for you to decide. We have spent a lot of time thinking about the current location. Unfortunately, it's just not up to par. Financially, I know that each one of you will have to make that decision about what is financially appropriate. But I myself, when I think about the finances of what it would take financially just to keep the current Pennacook Library branch in its current location, financially that just doesn't make sense to me. As was pointed out, kind of to get it to an ADA compliant level just to be able to enter into the current branch is a significant amount of money. So we've spoken about the plans that have been presented. I know that Director Fabian has spent a lot of time looking at a lot of locations around Pennacook. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem as though that there are a lot of options, and this is a great option that would allow the library to continue to meet the needs of the community.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councilor Brown.
You just said it to meet the needs of the community. Could you describe what those needs are? What does the library provide for the community?
Well, so obviously some people think libraries are just a place to go and get books or magazines, but libraries are more than that, especially if, you know, when you think about, for example, on the Heights, our Heights branch location, it provides that, it provides a source for tutoring, it provides Wi-Fi, internet connections to those that might not have it in their home. Things that, for example, just having the electric e-bikes go out to Pennacook for an event. Yes, they have Wi-Fi, but those e-bikes can't be there 24/7. So libraries, community centers are a place where our community can go. I think that there are individuals I saw in the letters of support for this within the packet that have attempted to address that from their perspectives. I won't speak on everybody's, but I think that libraries, community centers provide aspects for our community to be a community, and I think that that's really important.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I wanted to say thank you and appreciate you volunteering for the board.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Who else would like to testify? Go ahead. Sorry, Fistos.
Somebody else, sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. I'll make it quick. Just two brief things. Number one, if you're talking about a library that serves everybody, is there any concern about people who might want to patronize a library who may have, should we say, parole issues that forbids them going anywhere where there's children? I mean, it seems to me that there are a number of those people in this community that might be, you know, not welcome at the Boys and Girls Club. So would they be allowed to patronize the library? And before you say, well, they can access it electronically, I would say those are probably the people who most need to go to the library to access things electronically. So, you know, that's an issue, and I think it's something that I won't say it should kill this plan, but you need to work it out with the Boys and Girls Club about, can we really make this library available to everybody? And the second thing is, you have these community development block grants. Twice a year you can get $500,000 for public facilities. And I'm just wondering, you know, couldn't we, instead of spending over $1 million of city money, apply one of these block grants toward the library to kind of cut down the effect on the tax rate? I mean, I see that, I thought there was supposed to be a hearing this month, now it's next month, I guess. You're offering a block grant to an organization that last time forfeited it because they didn't get around to doing it. So what if we had an option, let the council next month vote on, do you really want to give the money to that organization? Would you rather apply for the $500,000 block grant for our library for public facilities? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry. Sure, welcome.
Good evening, Your Honor and City Councilors. Thank you just for your service to our city and for this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Fiston Deshimie. I work for AFCC, American Friends Service Committee, and a leader for Change for Concord. And I'm a Pennacook resident, of course. I'm here to advocate for Pennacook's public communities around the proposed library plan. This is about BIPOC community. But first, I want to thank Director Matt Walsh, City Manager Tom Aspel, Councilor Brett Todd, and city staff for their years of hard work and the Pennacook Library Plan. I am aware that existing building is in disrepair and too costly to renovate. And it is my understanding that you have searched hard for a new location. I see why city jumped and at the opportunity to work with the Boys and Girls Club on the current location. It can be said the strength of a town can be measured by its public library. Libraries help residents figure out the complexities of life, everything from literacy to navigating the healthcare system. I don't think I need to explain why these resources are absolutely critical to the new American community. I'm not alone in my deep concern that library holding will be reduced to less than half of the current category in the proposed new location. I'm not alone in my concern that these holdings will primarily be stored on carts in the closet, greatly reducing the likelihood that they will actually circulate among patrons. However, my greatest concern is that the voice for BIPOC community have not been heard in the process. And of course, I understand these concerns that we all have together. It's about creating bigger opportunity and bigger spaces for bigger opportunities for more resources for everybody. But I think reducing that idea is a danger to the community that we have to recognize the whole community. And that brings us to the point of understanding how we could make the project bigger than we think. These are my requests, maybe solutions. I think it might help us together to kind of do something about this. I request a community meeting focused on how the new library can best serve the new American communities or BIPOC community as well as other underserved communities in Pinnacook. I request that new library incorporate inclusive ways to be welcome in new Americans and other marginalized people. One example is to include new American and indigenous languages, art, and culture in the design. I request that library hours serve all Pinnacook residents, including the new American communities or BIPOC community, and funds be allocated to increase operating hours, which I visited the library sometimes 8 hours per week. It's not good. It doesn't help us. I request that library programming include classes focused on the unique needs of BIPOC community so they can continue to improve their lives. Importantly, as discussed at a recent Pinnacook Village Association meeting, it is the expectation of the Pinnacook community that the current library plan is a semi-temporary solution. In 5 to 10 years, with expected growth in our village, we expect the city to work to find a bigger and better location for a stand-alone library with more than twice the holdings, and we expect the building and design process will include the BIPOC community and other marginalized communities. So I will take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I appreciate it. Anybody have any questions? Council Brown?
Yes. Can you just tell me how you used the library? What kinds of things did you do? Were you just taking out books when you were at the library? How did you use the library?
I did have a card. The fact that they don't have enough time to hold meetings or do anything like that, maybe you can read for a longer, like enough time, or having some sort of discussions with people over. It's very difficult, so I would have to use my card to get books and read them home or take them with me anywhere. So, yeah.
Council Credwick.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Nishami, thank you so much for your, I hope I said your last name correctly, for your testimony today. As a representative for Change for Concord that is familiar with the community center up on the Heights and is familiar with the library location that we have there, the satellite library location, the books are on mobile shelves, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And does Change for Concord feel that this community satellite location meets the needs of our new American communities?
Absolutely.
And so I apologize, Your Honor, I'm asking a series of questions. And do you envision that the Pennacook branch also serve the same type of services that mirrors what is at the community center at this Pennacook branch that we're envisioning?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No
I
problem.
appreciate your input.
Anyone else? Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
How you feeling, by the way? How you
Are you
feeling, by
feeling
the way?
better?
How you feeling?
Better.
Oh, I'm feeling good. Thank you for asking.
Who else would like to testify? Anyone else? Good evening and welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Wendy Follinsby, and I live in Pennacook. And I've changed my speech about 6 times since I've come in, so bear with me.
We did get your email, by the way.
You did get my email?
Everyone has your email.
Good. This isn't what's in my email.
Just wanted to know we read that too, though.
So you don't have what's on this, because I hadn't heard what had been said. Before I speak, I do want to thank everybody who's here, those who I've talked to and those who I haven't, for all your years of service. Some of you have been here for decades, so thank you. And before I speak about my support for this new plan, I do want to make sure the council and the residents know 3 facts about the Pennacook Branch Library, which I don't think I have heard when you've been talking in the past. And I want you to know that between 1850, which is when the Pennacook Branch became a library, was first a library in Pennacook, on a bookshelf in a store. From 1850 to 1947, the Pennacook Library has been located in at least 7 different locations in the village area. Once it was at the Pennacook Academy, which is where the Bosquen City Hall and stuff is. So the branch has been located in several places in those years. In 1888 to 89, we consolidated our 1,600 volumes, which was considered enormous at the time, with the Concord Public Library. And there were evidently weekly trips taken to Pennacook to bring books to residents. And there's like a block of time which I can't find the information about, but that's what I know so far. And in 1947, the police station in Pennacook was turned over to the library for its use, and after almost $13,000 in renovations and remodeling, the branch was opened, and according to the city's annual report in 1948, the Pennacook branch was generally recognized as one of the finest branch libraries in New Hampshire. This completely modern library, this is 1948, had a capacity of 4,000 volumes. And according to the website, Pennacook right now has 10,000 items you can check out, from books to everything else. So The Village of Pennacook has been supporting and using library services for over 150 years. It has been a part of our community. It is not something we want to leave our community. And I appreciate that you also seem to be in support of and recognize the importance that a library plays in a community. This is a beloved building. 50 years as a police station. Lots of people have memories about the police station that they tell me about, especially the cells in the basement, which I've never been to and never had a desire to go see. And then 75 years as our branch. So it served the community well. It is a beloved landmark in the village. I am pleased that you are recognizing that and you're helping to preserve it. Hopefully, whoever purchases will not allow it to the same fate as what happened to the tannery, and it just falls apart. And so I appreciate that you've put that in the purchase and sales agreement. And I do support this. I think this current plan, although in the beginning I was a little hesitant, I do support it now. I believe if you build it, they will come. It is a great idea. The relationship with the Boys and Girls Club is one that I think is a win-win situation for everyone. And I don't think I need to explain to you what the benefits of a library are to a community. I think you have enough information about that. And I would love for it to be bigger, but I think it's great. What it is fine. This will be fine. We need a community center. We need a place that's accessible for people. We need everybody to know that they're welcome, and this is where you start. And if in 10 or 15 years somebody gives us a beautiful building and says, hey, make this into the library, then we'll come back. But I think this is a great plan. So I hope you approve it.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Ms. Follinsby. So this space, you're a Pennacook resident, this space will be taking over the Pennacook Community Center, correct? Could you tell me what some of those services were in the Pennacook Community Center?
Well, I know that they had, I didn't use it as much as some of the other parents. They used, they had sports there for the kids. They had exercise for the community. They had educational programs. And I think that creative people can make this work. And the library will be open when the library's open, and then when it's not open, it can be used for meetings and community groups that need to meet that don't have a space. And so I think it would be a benefit to the community.
Just a follow-up. Can I ask where some of those programs are going that were once in the Pennacook Community Center?
Well, the senior center is the only one that I'm not aware where they're going. I don't know where that is, because the places that I was given the names of, I couldn't tell you where they are. I don't know where they have to go. So there are some things. I know that the Historical Society has provided some support for meeting space for the senior center for some of their programs, or one of their programs or something.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Kirby?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Follinsby, it's so good to see you again and to hear your testimony today. Are you still on the board of directors for the Concord Library Foundation?
I am on the board of directors for the Concord Library Foundation. I'm the president of the Friends of the Pennacook Branch Library, and I'm on the board for the Pennacook Historical Society. So yes, I am.
Awesome. Does the Library Foundation have any input on this particular branch library as an organization, not as you as an individual on the board?
Yep. As I have two board members with me tonight, and they said that I could easily say that we support this. The foundation supports this also.
Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
your testimony.
Anyone else?
I just want to say, Wendy's been there from day one when we first started thinking about this, and you have made it a better project. So thank you.
And I have been one of the annoying people that calls Mr. Fabian and says, go to 16 Hobart Street and look at that house and see if, you know, so I mean, we've been trying to find a location for 3 years that I've been involved, looking for 3 years. So I think this is a great thing, and I've been to the Boys and Girls Club meeting that they had, and they're wonderful people. So this is a partnership that I would welcome in Pennacook and think would benefit anyone who is lucky enough to use it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony tonight. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. I believe that takes care of our public hearings this evening, brings us to our action phase. I'm going to skip item 35 and do that at the end. I think we can move quickly through the others so we can focus on 35. Madam Clerk, item 36, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title III, Building and Housing Codes, Chapter 26.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. Motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 37, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title III, Building and Housing Codes, Chapter 27.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 38, please.
A resolution appropriating the sum of $20,455.30 for residential granite curb cost sharing and developer reimbursement for off-site improvements along South State Street as part of the roadway surface improvement sub-project, and accepting the sum of $20,455.30 for this purpose.
Move approval.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Having received the necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 39, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $24,960.24 as a transfer to the opioid abatement reserve, and accepting the sum of $24,960.24 in settlement funds for this purpose.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have received the necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 40, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $35,000 to clean up an abandoned homeless camp on city-owned land at 58 Lock Road, and authorizing the use of general fund balance for this purpose.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Councilor Grady, second.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I ask a question of the city manager?
Sure.
Mr. Manager, can you tell me what efforts the city is taking to ensure that we are not faced with these types of environmental hazards moving forward?
Yes, so actually the police department, working together with the fire department and other city staff, have looked at the locations of facilities throughout these type of facilities throughout the community, and keeping an eye on where those are, and we're encouraging residents to contact us immediately if they see something going on. So I've actually had many city councilors call me and say they've talked to residents who are concerned about what may be going on in their neighborhoods. And then we actually put that information in the hands of the police department and others, and the fire department, so they're aware in case they get calls for services. And then if it's public property, keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't devolve. But in many cases, as you know, there's a lot of state property that is out there. So the state is also doing the same thing and working together closely with them. And there's a lot of private property. And for the private property, we actually had to remove several camps lately because we're contacted by and working together with the private property owners because they don't want folks on their property because there are so many goods are going missing, so many illicit activities that are occurring on their property. They're concerned about liability, the impact to their businesses and their homes and their children. So we're working together with all those sectors to try to keep an eye on things.
Very much. Any further questions? Council Fennessy?
Thank you. Mr. Schwenker, when he was testifying, asked some questions related to why we needed sort of a hazmat company, basically, to do this work. Can you kind of let the public know why, what types of materials we're finding?
Well, a lot of drug paraphernalia, a lot of materials that are a lot of human waste that are out of these sites, contaminating, which is one of the reasons that, you know, the Forest Society was concerned about this is, I mean, and I'm not talking a very small area, this is over large areas of property. Also, there's a lot of material that has been being thrown away that is attracting vectors to them. So there's a whole series of things that go out there. In the past, as I mentioned during the report, we've been able to clean some of these sites up with volunteers, with our trails rangers, with our city staff. But the liability associated with this, we're actually discouraging residents from going out and helping clean up these sites because of the needles and a lot of the contamination at the site, things they may not even be realized that they're touching. At the same time, what we find is a lot of these areas now are so close to trail networks and places where people go and people's animals, particularly their dogs go or hunters go, whatever it's going to be, that we're really concerned that it's going to cause a lot of harm to the general public. So, and I won't even get into the whole issues of the people who are in these sites and some of the dangers they may pose. Some of them, not all of them, that some of them may pose to the community.
Councilor Kravitz.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to make sure that we as a community are recognizing that we as a council are taking up an action to accept $24,900 and some odd change for opioid reimbursement or a settlement for the impact that it's had on our community because of the costs that we've incurred through our police department, our fire department, et cetera. And now we're turning around and we're spending $35,000, $10,000 more in order to clean up a site that has hazardous waste, that some of which is drug paraphernalia. The irony is stunning, but at the same time, the community needs to recognize that when we as a council, we as a community are stating that we have an opioid epidemic, no, we cannot recover what we are spending to go after this issue. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Roy-Sawkins.
Thank you. City Manager, would you agree that in the absence of more affordable housing or stronger safety network, that we will continue to see homeless encampments move around the city and require mitigation services wherever those pop up?
Around the country,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
When calling around and asking questions around what are solutions that we can explore, not having that immediate housing, not having those immediate services, despite a lot of good efforts by a lot of good people and a lot of good organizations. Some of the things that people spoke to me about were things like, particularly in encampments that are on public property, having dumpsters or trash can services, sanitation stations, things like that, to limit some of that outgrowth of the problems that we're then spending tens of thousands of dollars to go clean up. And that there were a lot of programs like that set up during COVID. Did the city engage in any of those during the previous years, or are those things that we've explored?
The city's done occasionally. We've provided porta potties for various locations around the city, but very limited.
Mm-hmm. And was that, follow-up please, was that near these encampments, or were those in public spaces, or both?
Both, and unfortunately they were burned to the ground.
In the public parks?
Mm-hmm. Or tripped over, or destroyed, or, yes, causing contamination for then children in those areas, yes.
And how many, follow-up please.
Sure.
How many encampments do we currently have in Concord?
Dozens.
And follow. And how many of them do you think will require cleanup services?
Many. I think you'll see, I think the best answer to that question is you're going to see, as part of a budget submittal going forward, this will be a permanent cost the city's going to have to incur.
And the last question, what city committees are looking into or exploring other options to address this growing concern, knowing that we're going to spend tens of thousands or hundreds of dollars to just move the problem, the concern, while still not moving people out of that situation, but continuing to incur these costs for our community.
I think there's quite a few, actually. The city council is working on that. I think you've done a few projects just recently between your cooperative projects with Catch, your cooperative projects with Caleb Associates, the private sector. We're putting up a lot of affordable housing throughout the city right now. Unlike many other communities, actually, the city of Concord is addressing this issue and taking it head on by actually building homes and working with people to build homes, provide grants to the Concord Coalition and homelessness, working with them. So I think Concord has taken a very strong step forward over the last decade or so to do this, unlike most other communities.
Sorry.
Sure.
Thank you. And that was part of what I was hoping you would address. The other part of it is, are there other ideas or solutions that are being explored for how to help with these homeless encampments in other communities that we haven't tried yet?
I don't know if I'm not sure. It's a kind of open-ended question about what other folks are doing. What I've seen work in other places is actually trying to make sure that you have the services available for folks. We have, as you know, we have a welfare department. Anybody who comes there and asks for service who's qualified receives it, no questions asked. That's not true of most communities. Most communities actually don't properly fund their welfare departments. We do. So I think there's a lot of things that we do that are working towards that end, but it's going to be 1,000 solutions to this. It's not just going to be 3 or 4.
Thank you.
That's great, Sexton.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Manager, I'm wondering if you could tell me if any of these encampments are having an environmental impact, or there's been an environmental impact on the Merrimack River.
Oh, absolutely. For example, the one behind the Supreme Court out by Concord Crew has a direct sluiceway to the Merrimack River, which then feeds down and towards the water resources for the communities to the south of us, mainly Manchester and Nashua.
I'm going to go Council Champlin and then Council Brown.
Thanks, Your Honor. I don't have a question for the city manager, but we're not in the question phase anyway. I just wanted to say that homelessness, as the city manager indicated, is a national problem, a national challenge. And here in Concord, saying just like many other communities, large communities in New Hampshire, the steering committee on the city's plan to end homelessness has been putting a lot of time into this. There are models used in other communities that have led to functional zero, which is homelessness is temporary, it's unusual, and I think we could get there. The steering committee held a summit in November, which had participation from our city police, our city fire, the State Department of Corrections, various other organizations. I don't want to leave anybody out, but it was a great convening to start moving in the direction of trying to find a way to have a more coordinated effort, to start addressing individual by individual homelessness. Homelessness is a challenge for which I think everyone wants a simple answer and a simple solution, but there is not a simple solution, because homelessness is not only a matter of poverty today, it's a matter of substance abuse, it's a matter of mental health issues, it's a matter of in some cases, having a criminal background. And so all these issues have to be addressed on a person-by-person basis, because every one of these individuals is different. There are people who take advantage of the situation in the various communities, because these really are small communities. But I think that this city has the ability to address this on a long-term basis, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next week. It's going to really take a concerted, very coordinated, well-planned effort to address it. And I think, as the city manager indicates, we are making inroads just by virtue of the number of housing units that this council has facilitated or that we've approved for the city. Because every housing unit helps to address that challenge. Without the housing units, there's no way to move people out of homelessness and into permanent housing, permanent supported housing, to make sure that they're successful. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Council Brown. Anyone else? So, a lot of discussion about, the item is about cleaning up a camp, and it's $35,000 because it's a hazardous waste site. And I appreciate your comment that we have to prepare for this in the future, but I think we need to be clear to the public that the city government is not about to pay for the cleanup of camps on private property, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, this is a situation where the Conservation Commission could no longer pay for the cleanup of this, and thus came to us in terms of city council saying, we need help, and we're taking it out of the operating budget.
That's correct. I should note, and we also won't be paying for cleanups on state property. The projected cost for the cleanup behind the Supreme Court building next to the Concord Crew is $66,000.
Exactly.
So you put those two together, you got $100,000 right there.
Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. Just one other thing, maybe the city manager can correct me, but part of the reason why we need to do this cleanup is we'd be in violation of our obligations under conservation easement. So I'm not sure we have necessarily a choice. We need to do this in order to remain in compliance with the previous commitments we've made.
That's correct.
Councilor Rice-Hawkins.
Thank you. This is a tough conversation. I obviously support this agenda item, but I'm just very conscious of the fact that we are literally moving people down the road to the next encampment, to the next allocation of funds, and that we don't have the housing right now, that we have a lot of work that we're trying to do, and that we need some stopgaps. And as a community, that means having some uncomfortable conversations about if people are intense in our community and we don't have housing and they're not in the place to move themselves out of that, what can we do to help them and to also help our community so that we're not just repeating this pattern? And I will continue my statement because I can see the mayor's perplexed here. Public Safety Advisory Board, we talked about the homelessness issue, and we had this conversation, and part of one of the things that came up is if you know people are going to be on campgrounds, to what the point Mr. Schreiker made, can we facilitate that in a safer, healthier way for our community, our environment, and the individuals who are most impacted, who are, in some cases, have nowhere else to go and cannot seek those services or recover when they're constantly pushed out of the one place of protection that they have found for themselves. And unfortunately, that is what is happening. Again, it's not an easy answer. People don't want to have an encampment in their neighborhood or next to their business. But as a community, we have to recognize this is just going to continue to happen until we have all the solutions in place. So maybe we need to talk a little bit more about some of those stopgaps.
So, so I'm trying not to be defensive because I've been actually working on this issue for a mighty, mighty long time. And, when I asked the council back in 2012 to come forth and put together a plan to end homelessness, the community came together, we had all parties come together, we came up with a plan. The plan was adopted by the city council at the time. I mean, in 10 years ago when we adopted the plan, one of the things I remember talking about is the cost of housing. Forget the availability, talk about even the cost of it. And a single family, not single family, a one-room unit was like $800. It was like $750, $800. Today it's $1,200 plus, right? It could be $1,400. There's so many factors going on, but I do want to put a bit of a different face to this, because there are a lot of really good people working extremely hard to solve this problem. And it is not as if we're all just sitting on their hands and, we got to have a conversation. Yes, I'm always for those conversations. We absolutely should. But there's a lot of good people doing a lot of really good work. We have the shelter that's open now, thank goodness. As it gets cold, that's open. But, everyone comes with a different story. And when we call it a summit, but it was basically as Councilor Champlin, as the chair of the steering committee that was adopted with the homeless plan back in 2012 that we put together, and myself, we invited people to come together. We had over 50 people attend at the Merrimack County courthouse. These are people that from all levels of branches of government, from the state to the county to the city to the nonprofit world to every walk of life, the hospital, everyone sometimes you don't even think about the people who touch this problem. And we had them all there in the room. And, there are solutions. There are, and things do get better as you learn. For instance, one of the things with the state actually adopted a computer, basically I'll say it was MMIS, but it's not, it's HMIS, thank you, where there's data on individuals. So that information is shared with the CAP agency. The CAP agency then works with many of the local providers that we have in the area. So it could be Riverbend, it could be the Concord Coalition Homeless, it could be assortment of folks. And what we agreed, and Council Champlin, I think, helped, kind of organize it a little bit, and that bring these people together so that we actually have conversations every couple weeks, so we can say, all right, we got this guy Boulay, what does he need? Well, he just lost his job, so he needs this, and they're able to really focus on the individual. And that is, I think, kind of part of the solution that's going to make it much easier when we start looking at individuals as opposed to the kind of broad brush of what are we going to do with homelessness. So we've learned a lot over the past 10 years. I think we've done a lot as a community over the past 10 years, and I think we're continuing to do a whole lot. Is the problem growing? Absolutely. When we looked at the numbers back in 2012, we were literally talking, and I'm not making this up, you can go back and read the report, it was like 15 chronically homeless people. That's what we were talking about, 15. And chronically homeless, as we defined in the report, was over a year, okay? There are well over 100, probably over 150 easy, of homeless people living in our community for all sorts of reasons. So this is not a problem that is shrinking, it is growing. And it is so multifaceted, as you heard earlier. It is people truly who have mental health issues, who are then self-medicating, who maybe down on their luck. I think your comments are wildly appropriate. I welcome your comments, but I don't want to discourage those people who have worked so hard and have been so dedicated to finding solutions in this community. Councilor Hawkins, Bryce Hawkins.
Thank you. And I think that goes back to if there were easy answers, we would have solved this issue by now. So I think that having these comments or this conversation is not to say that there's not a lot of good work being done, but the reality is we're going to continue to have encampments, and we're going to continue to move people, and we're going to continue to pay for those environmental cleanups. And if we know that, are there other things that we can be doing to intervene in that cycle? Thank you.
Right, it is, and I think you look at the pictures. It's really important to look at those pictures, because I had a grandson who lost his bike this year. It was stolen right off their porch. And when I look at these pictures and I look at the number of bicycles, there were 100 bicycles in this particular camp. I mean, it's frustrating what's going on in some of these camps. So having the caseworkers, I think, is so critical. And the new director of the Concord Coalition and Homelessness, one of the first things she talked about was having more caseworkers out in the field. I absolutely commended her for the work and prioritization of doing that. So, anyone else? Okay, we do have a motion before us, correct?
Yep.
It's been seconded. Are we ready for the question?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And having received the necessary 2/3, the motion is adopted. And that takes us to item 41, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $45,000 for conducting illegal drug-related investigations and accepting $45,000 in grant funding from the New Hampshire Department of Safety.
Move approval. Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Before I take a vote, I'll notice that Council Brown has recused himself from this particular item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it, have received necessary 2/3, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 42, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $1,300,000 for the acquisition of real estate to be developed at 76 Community Drive in Pennacook for the purpose of establishing a new Pennacook Branch Library and Community Center, authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase and sales agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Hampshire to acquire said real estate, authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the sum of $1,300,000 for this purpose, authorizing the divestment of city-owned property located at 3 Merrimack Street in Pennacook, together with other vacant city land located at the intersection of Sanders and Merrimack Street in Pennacook, upon completion of the new Pennacook Branch Library and Community Center at 76 Community Drive.
Move approval.
Second.
Council Todd moves approval, seconded. Council Champlin. Is there any discussion? Council Brown.
Thank you. I just want to say outright that I think this is a good proposal. I think the partnership with Boys and Girls Club is great. I had an excellent conversation with Director Fabian, who's looking at reaching more kids. And I think the fact that it faces, or at least the end of the building, is closest to Rolfe Park is great. So people who are at the park, who are at the nearby schools, picking up their kids at the Boys and Girls Club can also access the library. The things that I don't like about this are that it's further away from public transportation by about 3 times, that the actual square footage of space is smaller. It is not all accessible. The 3 Merrimack is 1,080 feet on the first floor, the same on the second floor. In the tour we saw there's a kitchenette, there's tons of storage. They did programming upstairs. They can't do programming with handicapped folks. But in the new space, they would really only have 850 square feet of space. And considering all that a library does, I don't think that's enough. But I will defer to the people of Pennacook who are afraid of losing library services if we don't do this. I really appreciate, Mr. City Manager, that you said that we would not, that the services will continue at 3 Merrimack Street until the completion of the project. That is correct? That the services will continue?
It's in the report, yes.
Yes. So, yeah, I think, I would hope that we could do better because housing in Pennacook is only increasing, and I think the services should match. Back in 1947, there were 4,000 items available for circulation, and we're shrinking that now to 2,000. So I hope that we can find a way to increase the services for the population that is growing in Pennacook. But I do support this.
Council Pierce.
I thank you, Councilor Brown, for that last statement, because I wasn't sure if you were supporting it or not. So I guess my question's been answered. She said she had, so thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Of course, I'm going to support this. I think it's an excellent partnership between the city and the Boys and Girls Club. I also think that this will be an opportunity, actually. I see this a little bit differently than Councilor Brown. I think actually this will be a great opportunity to open up attendance to a larger group of residents in Pennacook. One of the things that I found interesting, receiving some statistics from Director Fabian, is that although circulation has doubled since the hours increased at the Pennacook Branch Library, foot traffic has remained the same. And I'm afraid that remaining in the current branch, that trend would continue, that it's hard to draw people in. You heard him speak tonight about the issues with parking and the size limitations, the limitations in terms of accessibility to all members of our community. So I think that on those fronts, all around, I expect that this will perhaps improve foot traffic through at the new location, with some great synergy also with Rolfe Park across the street and with the Boys and Girls Club. So I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to take the opportunity to recognize the efforts of people like Councilor Todd, Councilor Shurtleff, Councilor Blanchard, who have come before us. At one point in time, there was a discussion of eliminating the Pennacook Library in its entirety and consolidating all of those services in the home office. And it might have taken a long time, a lot of buildings that we've investigated and reviewed and otherwise assessed. And here we are before us tonight with really the opportunity to solidify library services in Pennacook for the next couple generations. So I give credit to all those who have advocated over the years for that particular development, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Ron, you have
I
something
just,
else
I
to
just
share?
want to point out that the foot.
Still for it?
Oh, yes, of
All right,
course.
okay, sure.
But I do want to point out that the foot traffic may not have increased because the Pennacook branch was closed during COVID the entire time. And then when it was reopened, it was only reopened for 5 hours. And after June and after they hired additional folks, it was 10 hours. When I did the tour, there was an elderly woman with a walker, and I asked her, I said, how do you feel about this proposal? How do you feel about it being the Girls Club and joining with the Boys and Girls Club? And she said, I'm excited about it because of the reliability. I think folks just want to know that their library will be open and accessible.
Anyone else?
Just to clarify, Your Honor,
You still for it?
excuse me?
You still for it?
I am still for it,
Okay.
absolutely, all the way. The statistics that Councilor Brown mentioned, actually, those are recent statistics, so that was for the last month or two, that the foot traffic has remained the same, despite the fact that the hours were recently increased, so that was my point. Thank you.
Anybody else? Not to belabor it, but I'm going to make a couple points. One is we talk about public-private partnerships, and I think this is an excellent example of a public-private partnership that will be successful and will truly benefit the community. So to Mr. Eman and your whole team, your board of directors, not only have you already served this community in an incredible capacity, but the additional services to Pennacook is going to be phenomenal. So the only reservation I have, and I promised my father I would say this. My father remembers when it was originally built in Pennacook, when he grew up there, and he played basketball there, and he was a little sad when he took it down. I handed him the engineer report, and he looked at me and goes, yeah, but I played basketball there. So, so if some old guy shows up and shoots some hoop, you'll know who it is.
Name a boule.
So, but anyway, number one is I really do appreciate the Boys and Girls Club stepping up, and I think this renovation is going to revitalize that whole area. I think the work that the city has done to partner with it in terms of the street and the streetscape, and then the connection to the park is going to be a phenomenal addition. That's number one. Number two is we've had a lot of conversation about size. You know, and I think it was somebody said earlier, you know, bigger would be great, bigger would be great. True. But I have to say that the thing that I've taken away is the library from when I started, and we started talking about this over here at the downtown branch, the way libraries are used today is so different than what they were just 15, 20 years ago. It is a completely different philosophy, and you don't have to go very far to look at even some of the smaller towns around us or places like Portsmouth, where they have created libraries which are much more like, you know, open cafes, and they're open space and meeting space. And I think that what we're doing here in Pennacook is doing that. We're creating that sense of space, just like so many other communities have, and we're transforming what the libraries are. They're just not stacks of books anymore that you go in and you know, I remember the nice librarian saying, shh, you know, because I was too loud. But today, it's, you know, it's much more interactive, and it's so much. You laugh. Yeah, it was a while, man. Come on, can't you sense it?
I was with you.
Yeah, right. But it's so much better, and I think this space that's being created is going to be much more reflective of how libraries are used today. And I think the fact that you know, we could see it when we did the branch library at the Heights. You know, giving seniors an opportunity and kids together in the same place, I think is going to be a great mix to that multi-generational facility. So I'm really glad, and I hope we all do support it. And I think it's one of those positive things that makes Concord a much better place to live. So with that, anyone else? Yes, sir. Yep. The motion was to approve the supplemental PNS agreement. Correct?
Absolutely, thank you.
With that, any other? Seeing none, ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have received necessary 2/3. The motion is adopted. Okay, it's 8:55. We're going to take a 3-minute recess. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about I-93. Madam Clerk, item 30,
Not good.
35,
It's really
please.
bad.
It's public hearing action on New Hampshire Department of Transportation proposed changes to I-93 Bow Concord.
Thank you very much. Okay, at the last meeting, we adopted the piece around the deck park, and we left after the public hearing, we left the opportunity for us to process kind of what we had heard. I believe we received some further public testimony. It should be in your packet. I asked people to come with their thoughts and such. I did draft this letter for your consideration. Basically, the way I set it up was much like the way we talked about it. I did it by exits, 12, 13, 14, 15. Around exit 14, you'll see that I broke it down into several different categories, including the Merrimack River Greenway Trail, as well as the Store Street Extension North, Stickney Ave, right in, right out, Stickney Ave, new intersection South Commercial, Constitution Ave, northbound on ramp. And then at the end, I talked about, in general, the interstate widening piece. And then the deck park, although we've acted upon it, I kept this in because this is in essence the recommendations that we're sending off to DOT. So with that, do y'all need a couple minutes to kind of process it? Would that be easy? Let's do that.
Yes, please.
No. Okay, we about ready to correct all my mistakes?
Yes.
Okay. For purposes of just discussion, why don't we take it section by section? It might be the easiest, if that's okay. That'll work for everybody?
Your Honor, I just would like to, oh, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm just a little confused. This is the action phase, right, where we discuss the public testimony that we heard?
Yeah.
We're not this is not just what we're discussing?
No.
Just here, okay.
But in terms of organizing discussion, I thought this might be a way to do it, but if somebody has a better way, I'm open to any idea. Sounds good.
That's great.
Councilor Price Hawkins.
I just had one broad question before we go section by section. Is there any part of this that it differs from the TPAC report that we reviewed? Thank you.
There's a couple sections where I probably emphasized a little bit, some areas a little more than other, like the widening piece. I probably was a little more direct with that.
You mean direct in which way?
Making sure that I recognize, like, so the first paragraph I wrote basically like, we made sure that the DOT updates its traffic study to ensure the current traffic volumes. I talked about the impact, how important it is, and to generally reconsider the number of lanes proposed as critical ensuring support of the project. I was trying to be a little more direct.
Excuse me, you're talking about page 5 on the widening?
Yep. So, Councilor Brown, if you want to, do you want to talk about something else?
I just feel like, we're not even talking about the environmental piece. I don't know that I see that in here at all, and just how significant that is to the highway widening. This is something that we heard a lot of testimony, both from the public and at TPAC. We discussed our concerns about that. I think widening the highway is a mistake. I went back and read the charrette that Suzanne Smith Myers had addressed, and I thought it was really interesting that on the first page they warned in 1993 the failure to challenge the assumption of expanding the highway and explore creative highway alternatives would doom Concord's downtown waterfront and the city's connection to the splendid natural resources, talking about the river. So, I feel like, we're not talking about accessing the river. We're not addressing the climate, what impact this is going to have on the climate, how we're heating up our city, how much closer the highway is going to be to Main Street, and the impact that's going to have on our downtown businesses, and just the speed factor of a wider highway. Where I-93 has been widened in the south, they are now facing increased traffic speeding violations where people are going. It was last month an article that said they clocked over 30 people going 90 miles an hour. And I'm thinking, this is a 4-mile stretch. We want people to slow down and stop and have a reason to pull off. When you're going 90 miles an hour, it's 2 minutes. It takes you 2 minutes to get through 4 miles. They're gone. So we are not welcoming anyone to Concord. So this legacy we have will be revitalizing the downtown only to then stuff it under a highway. I feel like we aren't recognizing what it's actually going to do to our Main Street businesses.
Okay, fair enough. Anyone else? Councilor Pierce?
Contrary to my problem before of not understanding whether Councilor Brown was for or against it, I'm going to take that as a strong against. Is that true?
That is.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Fennessy?
I would propose, as you suggested, that we go through exit by exit as you set this up, because I do think that, at least from my perspective, I found that to be the most productive way to talk about the project.
Okay. All right. Did anybody oppose that?
No.
All right. So, want to start with exit 12?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody like to make any changes? And if my language doesn't work, feel free to correct it. Go ahead, Councilor Rice.
Thank you. I'm not proposing change right now. I'm just trying to find all my TPAC notes to compare. So thank you. So I'm just putting a contingent and may come back to it.
Okay. I did try to capture TPAC. I mean, the basis for the report was kind of. So, subject review of final designs, maintenance DOT proposed conceptual improvements of the dual roundabout, exit 12 are acceptable. Requests the DOT use industry standards design principles, significant attention to incorporate safe access to bicycles and pedestrians throughout the proposed roundabout's location, including crosswalks and flashing beacons. Request DOT consider impacts of highway noise to the butters, exit 12, incorporate measures to ameliorate unreasonable. So I tried to do both, three things. One, say yes, the design of the dual works. Two, don't forget about the bicyclists, don't forget about pedestrians, make sure you put the crosswalks, flashing beacons. And by the way, if there are ways to minimize the noise impact to exit 12, those are three, those are things that I had captured based on the discussion and comments. Councilor Crederick, you had your hands first, and Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. I very much appreciate you putting the noise barriers in here because the DOT plan previously presented had no noise barriers at any area across this, with the exception, I think, to NHTI and their campus. This was the same concern that Bo had because of the close proximity that some of the residents had. And I'm very much appreciating you have the language in here because we now have a new housing project that is coming into this area adjacent to the highway. So thank you for that, Your Honor.
Sure. Councilor Fennessy. Oh, I apologize. Councilor Brown.
Thank you. Since this is the first exit, I would recommend that there's signage in advance of exit 12 that says people are entering into downtown Concord. The highway speeds are 45. I say for the next 4 miles through these exits, the highway speed should be dropped down to 45. Franconia and Notch did it. They have a 2-lane highway. People can appreciate the natural splendor. We would give people about 8 minutes to look at our beautiful river and decide, yes, I'm going to pull off because I'm going slow enough to do so safely.
So instead of instead of putting in this one, so if you look back, remember some of the testimony, and we did talk about TPAC as well, about signage. So perhaps what I would suggest is we do something after the widening, before the deck park, and put another kind of underlined category about signage. And if you want to incorporate some of that language, that's great.
I'd like to say signage and that the speed limit is 45.
Okay, that's part of the signage, I guess, is how I do it. That's a suggestion, doesn't mean we have to do it. So Councilor Fennessy was next. I apologize, I thought your hand was up. We'll go this way, Councilor Champlin.
Thanks, Your Honor. I was not at the TPAC meetings, I'm afraid. When you talk about sound barriers, are we talking about those big wooden, what are we talking about?
So from my perspective, I wasn't limited to anything I was just talking about what we can do to minimize the noise.
Okay, because it would be nice for people to actually see things like the South End Marsh and, and our river and, anyway. And unfortunately now when I go to Portsmouth and I don't see anything. All I see is a wooden barrier, so anyway.
Councilor Crederick.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had 2 comments. One is now addressing this. The other one is the speed. I don't believe we have the authority to change the speed of the highway. I believe that's a state issue that we'd have to take up with the legislature, but uncertain on that one. There's a lot of communities that are using sound barriers now to incorporate their history on those walls so that it serves a dual purpose. A great example of this is anywhere you go in Arizona, they have Native American history that is carved into the sound barriers. They've started doing that in New York State as well, and I think New Hampshire is behind the times, and we ought to be incorporating some of our history into our great state, since we are so fundamental in forming the United States of America with the signing of the Constitution here, and us being the 9th state to ratify that.
Yes.
We have a lot to offer.
Exit 12. Anybody else? Are we comfortable with this language, or whenever I propose changes?
Yes.
Okay, enough so we can move on at least. All right. Takes us to exit 13.
Clarification.
Sure.
I support having potentially exploring the speed limit reduction, whatever it may be. So I would love to add that in there.
Why wouldn't this, so do you oppose the idea of doing it at the end of its own separate paragraph?
That's fine.
Okay, exit 13. So the council supports the proposed provide additional turn lanes and northbound off-ramp, as well as the Manchester Street intersection, Old Turnpike, Black Hill Road. City Council, the opinion these improvements are valuable to the city within the context of transportation and economic development. City requests DOT carefully consider crossings, safe crossings for bicycle and pedestrians in the all two-lane approaches. A traffic light for the right turning traffic should not be allowed to turn right on red, so the bicycle can safely travel in the location. Include crosswalk signals for pedestrians. Council advocates for bikes, safe bicycle transitions with the rail and systems, Manchester Street. Could be accomplished by the addition of bike curb ramps, 10-foot wide multi-use paths. Requests the incorporate connections with the American River Greenway Trail within the existing right-of-way. Council requests the existing pedestrian ramp from Basin Street can be reconfigured to tie into Manchester Street, and landscaping requests be added, particularly in the tree and the plantings. So the map also is included, and this was kind of partly to show the curbing and how we could get people back and forth through that area. A lot of this was covered by TPAC. A lot of this was testimony we heard, so hopefully I captured some of it. Council Fennessy.
I just want to ask a question to make sure I understand. In the first paragraph, when you're talking about at all two-lane approaches and exits, are you talking about where there's going to be 2 lanes turning? Is that okay?
Yes. Yep. So the fear, what I heard from testimony was that a bicyclist is coming along and they got to go by 2 lanes turning right, and the idea was to create that red light so that a pedestrian or a biker could get through without having to worry about somebody turning right on red. Councilman McClure?
On the multi-use paths is maybe something at the end when you beautify, but are there specific colors? Are there specific markings? What are we using on these paths to delineate them differently from, I'd like to see something, I don't know, maybe that's at the end of the project, you get to choose your paint color or something. But I think that's important. If it's,
I don't disagree, but I don't want to be the one picking any color.
I'll help, I'll do that.
Councilman.
So I just would like to bring up the testimony from Ian McGregor, who was also on TPAC, and when he testified here last month, he described having to use the highway to get around Concord, that it's really not bike-friendly. To get from one end to the other, you have to jump onto the highway. And I'm looking at the wide lanes, the expanse of asphalt that bikes would be riding along. That's not welcoming. And at TPAC, we were talking about just creating a multimodal transportation network. I think that should come first before we have to work around an enormous, twice the width highway. Exit 13 is not welcoming for bicyclists, and that's people on the south end. That's people who are in the future Black Hills housing. I don't think this is a welcoming exit.
But we also, do we agree that we have cars backing up on the highway or trying to get off the ramp, and to put a double lane there seems to make sense, and then to have the state even be willing to work with us to create a double lane to turn left onto Old Turnpike Road. You shake your head at me.
I'm saying that's not.
You can shake my head, but if you want me to finish, I'd be glad to finish.
Go ahead.
So, thank you, appreciate that. So the idea that we can actually, the state's going to incorporate in their project, doesn't get the backup that shifts to the city. It actually kind of continues with the flow. So I understand the perspective of the bicycle, and I try to address that to get through that intersection. You're right, it's a lot of pavement, but it's also a lot of cars who are coming in the city, and we're going from 44,000 people population to 90,000 a day. So people are coming to our city, and they are getting off this ramp. So the question is it safe for them to back up the highway? Is it safe to be backing up over the bridge, or is there a better way to process it? And it seems like this 2-lane seems to make some sense.
Your Honor, I feel like they're just going to be hitting this ramp at higher speeds because the highway is wider. And we have heard testimony that it doesn't improve congestion. It is more dangerous.
And are you talking about the highway in general? We're talking about the
I'm talking about the project in general.
Right, okay. I'm talking about exit 13, so. Councilor Krivik.
Thank you, Your Honor. We've talked often when in having our conversations about the Merrimack River Greenway Trail that this particular area of the city at Exit 13 is probably the most underserved and food isolated area that we have in our community. It's also one of the poorest areas of our community. And we have no real amenities for any type of transportation other than car in this area. So to me, anything that adds any improvement for the walkability and bikeability in this area is significant because we don't have public transportation. We do have cars that are coming off a highway that are coming onto Manchester Street, and it is impactful. And I think that we need to be sensitive to the people that live here now, knowing the challenges that they have here now. And this project, despite whether you are in favor of the highway expansion or not, the improvements that are needed here at Exit 13 are needed now. Thank you.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mr.
Bouchard.
Mayor.
Mayor Pro
I
Tem.
also, the council to remember that Manchester Street isn't just commuter traffic, it's also business and industrial traffic going up Manchester Street and then up Old Turnpike Road, connecting to Regional Drive. So it's much more than just workers coming in and out of the city. But my comment, Mr. Mayor, is that I think the ramps, if we could add lighting coming off the ramps. I know when I come down off of Exit 13 to go onto Manchester Street, especially at night, there are people walking and there's a crosswalk there. And when, it's very hard to see pedestrians, so I would like to see some increased lighting at those crossing at those ramps because it is, you can't see them. So I think that would be important. And lights that shine down that don't harm our
Anybody-
new housing.
Anybody opposed to adding some language around lighting?
No, and if I may suggest, I'm not sure about the lighting under that bridge. I mean, that's, with the pedestrian walks that are there, I think having some lighting added.
Especially coming off the ramps, there's
Coming off the ramp.
there's crosswalks and you're looking to make a right or whatever and you don't see someone crossing
Because
at
even if you
night.
go to make a left, there's still a lot going on.
Yeah,
Isn't there one light? It's just really, it's really dark.
it's really dark. I don't, it just
Yeah.
happened to me the other day and it's just really dark and all of a sudden somebody was walking, especially with the homeless population down there wandering around at night. Just would be helpful.
I noticed that you had some great stuff related to sort of what the under lighting could be, sort of in the Loudon Road, Exit 14 area. I mean, obviously this is not a new crossing or new bridge, but similar types of lighting I think would be very impactful and make Exit 13 a lot more welcoming to people getting off the highway, and it'd make it much safer for pedestrians and bicyclists moving through there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else? Any other questions or comments about Exit 13? Okay. So I went to Exit 14. I broke it down. The first one I did was the Merrimack River Greenway Trail. Talked about it provided improvements for the users, the trail, the links, downtown, et cetera. The proposed typical section of Loudon Road through the project revised to be consistent with the proposed improvements. Loudon Road Bridge, 14-foot. So all this was trying to capture the kind of discussion that T-Beck had. Consideration should be given to beautifying the interstate bridge over Loudon Road, as well as constructing sloped abutments versus vertical retaining walls to open this area up. We talked about that. Thus making more inviting pedestrians. The bridge is a getaway connecting the heights and downtown, should be appropriately designed. So these were the examples that I think T-PAC included in their reports, so that's where they came from. City requests a design details of all intersections, trail crossings, industry standards and principles incorporate safe access for all users. It did try to incorporate the, we did talk about the different concepts, A, C, and F, for them to look at, but we should also include the following in the project, and that's why I tried to just include these bullets. Signal timing, which I think we heard a lot about, both for cars and pedestrians and bicycles. Right-of-way impacts, the Holiday Inn in the corner, aesthetics of the ramp, retaining walls, et cetera. The short the alternatives for configured for work, a vision for the design of the Store Street extension, including potential roundabout and the Main Street connector, and then lastly, the streetscape lighting, including landscaping, benches, local art, culture, and design. So, Councilor Brown?
When we talk about landscaping, can we be more specific? Flower planters, raised beds, art? I would like to be more specific. I go to Camden, Maine, I go to Hooksett, I went out west, and they do wonderful things with natural plants, native plants that are just lush, and because they're native and they do well in the environment. I think those would be appealing, especially when we hear a lot of people say we want something that invites us and looks aesthetically pleasing.
Okay.
So, Your Honor, I guess the palm trees you put in here. Not real.
Come on now.
Those are plastic ones, thank you.
Your Honor, one of the things that we're not addressing is the river access that we heard so much public testimony about. And I don't want to just leave it to a deck park that may or may not happen, the DOT would really have nothing to do with. Between exit 13 and 14, we own all that property. We could develop that as the Merrimack River Greenway Trail. Between exit 13 and 14, if we build that boardwalk from Terrell Park to the cornfields, we are then giving people on Manchester Street safe riverside access to the to Fort Eddy stores. And people who are living over on the Heights, they can then access the restaurants and shops and whatnot on Manchester Street. I believe that we just need to make the bridge safer at exit for the Memorial Bridge, but we own that property. We could develop that. That is a river walk.
Yes, but should that be in the is that a part of the DOT I-93 wide?
We can do that without widening the highway.
I never get to finish.
Councilor Brown, why are you yelling?
So I guess I just don't. Forget it. Who else was going? Councilor.
I just question, I thought we were planning on the Greenway Trail.
Right.
Isn't that an ongoing
So
project?
where is it? We have a dead end along the cornfields. We're talking about passways. We could have a true trail, something that actually connects us to Main Street if we chose to invest in it.
I'm flabbergasted because it's a project that's been longstanding, and the Merrimack River Greenway Trail Committee has been, pulling together funding. The city has been looking for funding on that, and I guess, Councilor, you make it sound like we're not doing that. I mean, that is something that we're actively engaged in. So I'm just confused. So I apologize.
Thank you. I just want to thank Councilor Brown for bringing this up because one of the things that I heard in testimony was people wanting to talk about access to the river. And I know initially the thought was that the development was going to come on the east side of the west side of the river. I always get these two confused. I apologize. The west side of the river. I think part of my struggle in listening to some of the feedback is it seems to me that the real place for us to develop is on the east side of the river, where we're going to have the opportunity corridor between the ice arena and Terrell Park. And so I think one of the things that I really like about what I'm hearing from DOT is they're going to help us create that connection between the Merrimack River Greenway Trail on the east side of the river and our downtown on the west. And so from my perspective, obviously I'm still interested in, if we can have another crossing over the river, but in the near term, this creates that access point between all of the great things we want to do on the river edge and our downtown. So I'm very excited about the possibility of working with DOT on that to create that connection.
Who else? Pierce.
So in your first bullet, or your first letter sentence, on page 4, this is where you're discussing the issue of pedestrian access across 14, correct? So we don't have a plan, you're just talking about the combination and asking DOT to come back with something that works.
We spent a lot of time talking about these various concepts.
Right.
And there were parts to each concept that were interesting. And part of the reason why, if I remember correctly, and I think I do, that we gave an option for all of these is that when the design actually starts to come together, there's only so much space. Right. And so what we envision may have to be adjusted because we just don't know how much space there's actually going to be. So that's why there's built-in flexibility, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything good or bad?
Forward.
Okay. The next piece of exit 14, I put was the Store Street Extension North.
Sorry, can I go back for
Oh,
one
yeah,
second?
please.
So, I think I'm good with it, but I would really love to eliminate another light on I always struggle, the west side of the highway itself. I understand for practical purposes why we want to make sure there's still a signal onto Stickney Ave, but I think I'm okay with what you've put here, but I do think we should continue to give some thought to whether there's a way to remove another signal, because I think that would help with our traffic moving between the east and the west side.
I think you're going to get a chance to talk about that when we talk about the northbound ramp.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about it more on the Main Street side of the highway.
You're talking, excuse me, Stickney Avenue
Yeah,
side?
Stickney Ave.
Yeah.
We're actually going to get there in 2 seconds. How's that? I promise. So the Store Street Extension North, this talks about the,
Sorry, I thought we moved to the next thing. My bad.
so confused at this point, you have no idea. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically we're talking about the, Horseshoe Pond, the Lincoln Line, et cetera, surplus railroad property. Does it generally work with people?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Question, Your Honor?
Sure.
Mr. Manager, the one question that I had here is I thought I had heard in the presentation that the state was going to construct that Store Street North Road at their expense, or the money that was coming in from the federal government. Here it suggests that the city would be paying for that construction.
You're thinking back to probably 2003, 2004, when we were looking at the original time frame for the I-93 corridor improvements. And at that time, we had asked the state if they constructed Store Street Extension North, would that preclude them, or not preclude isn't the right word, would it reduce the likelihood of having them widen the highway up? And the answer at that time was no, it really wouldn't. And this was outside their geographic boundary of what they were looking at. So it was the city's responsibility to do that. So you've been actually putting away the dollars for that in the TIF to actually be able to make that project happen. So it's really been on our set of books for a while now.
Understood. So maybe it's just part of I think I understood that. I wasn't going back to 2003, but so my understanding is the connections would be made in conjunction with the overall construction schedule, but it'd be done at our cost.
It would be at our cost, and would coordinate with the state as they're doing their project to make it work.
All right, thank you.
I think the key thing to talk about, though, is that the DOT's offered to relocate the lines. And that,
No, I understand.
we wouldn't be building any road if they.
Well, it's kind of the key piece, but it was really the funding I was going
And
at.
they're paying for that portion of it.
Thank you.
Okay, Stickney Ave, right in, right out. This is where we're at?
This is what I was talking about. I
Okay.
apologize.
No.
I thought you were going to the next exit.
Sorry. So I basically just saying that, we had the conversation about Ralph Pill Plaza, we had the conversation about now wanting to send people and cause further congestion up around other areas where they do U-turns and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I think I basically just said, you know,
Yeah, and I don't have a solution. I mean, I think that unless we're going to reroute all the traffic through sort of what we had talked about, where it's going up through 393 and then getting on to 93, which I'm not sure is a better solution. But from a local traffic standpoint, I'd just love to eliminate another light there.
I think you could get great consensus around that.
Yeah.
Then it comes to practical of how to do it, so.
I don't.
Councilor Bouchard.
Yeah, I don't. I think that light's important for our transportation center and for the Ralphville businesses. And someone who drives that a lot, at one point in time, it was a real pain, but I think we've got those lights pretty well synchronized where you're not stopped. I think for me, traveling back and forth all the time, is the congestion that is on the Loudon Road Bridge where those lanes are merging to get onto I-93, merging to the left, and then some are trying to go straight ahead to Main Street. That to me and those lights, and I think with the 93 proposal of straightening that all out, and our new Loudon Road Bridge will take care of that. But I understand it seems like a lot of lights, but they're pretty much synchronized, and I think it's important for those businesses. And our businesses that are going to be under a lot of strain with the construction of this project, I wouldn't want to take away more thing to make their livelihood more difficult, and also make our transportation center also not work as well as it could. So I'm in favor of keeping the light.
Yeah,
bottom line.
And I think that's where.
I know.
That's what Councilor said, but I think the idea of just eliminating a light sounds kind of attractive.
Eliminate them all. Take them all out.
Anybody else have a problem, issue with that? Or? Okay. Stickney Ave, intersection South Commercial Street, Constitution, pretty straightforward. Create the new intersection there, kind of improving the local transportation around that area that I think we just talked about. Does that seem okay to everybody? Northbound on-ramp. So we had the conversation about whether or not we should change anything, eliminate the whole thing, eliminate it if you're going east. So that's what I try to gather that, and basically just say that request the addition of the unsignalized northbound on-ramp for the westbound traffic, only helping the traffic flow. Yeah.
I support Councilor Bouchard being able to take that right turn.
And all the shoppers coming out of Fort Eddie Road. I appreciate it. Thank you, Councilor.
Can we move to exit 15? Is that okay?
Mhm.
All right. Okay, so 15. This is one I think got some of the most consensus. Eliminates the multiple conflict points, replaces the 4 red-listed bridges, and it deals with safety improvements. I tried to capture some of the discussion that we had here regarding the transition from the interstate to the city streets, and how if we can then make some changes to that, it being a gateway, slowing people down, creating a better sense of landscape, et cetera. That was the goal. Anybody? Okay. So the widening. So I tried to capture, and I will read this, but, so the BOA Concord I-93 widening project is currently proposed. It will have a significant impacts on the city of Concord. As such, the city appreciates DOT has agreed to update its traffic study to ensure that the current traffic volumes are reflective and that predicted traffic growth is based on actual traffic in the last several years. Any widening will directly impact the city and its residents and businesses. So it is important to ensure that any widening proposed is necessary. A genuine reconsideration of the number of lanes proposed is critical to ensuring the support for the project. I tried to capture that. Maybe it could be done better, but that's what I tried. So we basically said at the end, to evaluate the reduction of the interstate's footprint, number of lanes associated with it, and still meeting the purpose of the need of the project. We talked about that before. So, Councilor Brown.
I just really would like this council to seriously consider this highway will be widened by 50 feet. So that means it's 50 feet closer to Main Street. I'm 3,000 feet from the highway now. I can hear it in the middle of the night. What will people on Main Street hear? How inviting will Main Street be when they have the highway twice as wide? Just for an example, if you happen to have a business above Cheers, the highway will now be 279 feet from you.
Who has a business there?
I don't know.
Who would do that?
She called me out. Is that appropriate?
Oh, do you have a business there? Oh, I didn't know that. But that's what we're looking at. We are looking at our beautiful Main Street in the shadow, in the, trying to talk during outdoor dining when you're listening to the roar of cars go by at 90 miles an hour on the highway.
Thank you. I had a request for this section. In the second paragraph of the letter, it says that council expresses support for the project and offers the following requested modifications upon which the city's support is predicated upon. Why don't we put for the interstate widening, rather than that we appreciate that the DOT's agreed to update its traffic study, why don't we say we want them to update their traffic study and to look at other alternatives and come back to us with those? I think that's a reasonable request given the city, or given the testimony from the community.
So what are you saying different than what I did? Because they've already said they would do it, so I was saying that they've agreed to update it, so.
I'm saying that it should come back for another round, that they should do that and then come back to city council.
I think it does, right? If you look at the process, the letter they handed out at the last meeting, I don't know if you still have that. This is the one that was to the city manager dated November 12th, right? So they actually talk about what they're doing and the timeframes and such like that, and that's actually in the process, I thought.
So are we voting tonight then to support the project with these changes, but without requiring that study to be done before that approval? Is basically my question.
So my understanding, we had a public hearing on potential changes. We've heard, we had DPAC, we had this, we've spent several months now. And the goal was to actually send a letter to DOT stating what our concerns, our issues were, and what we liked and we disliked. That's what I thought, unless somebody else had another. I'm being simple about it, but that's.
And then the process is they're going to come back to city council?
Well, I think they come back to the whole community. They got to update, I mean, I don't need to read the letter, and you have a copy, but, they got to, public hearings, they've got to do their designs, they've got to do the environmental asset revisions, et cetera.
And my understanding is that they come back, they will do a public hearing with the community, but the city council doesn't have an official role at that point, or an official say.
I mean, we could do whatever we want. I mean, if we want to generate another discussion and send them another letter, we can do that anytime we want. Nothing precludes us from doing that.
But would others be open to the idea that, I mean, if we truly want them to do that, we're not, I'm a little uncomfortable saying we support the project and that they're going to update that study, because it basically says, update that study and whatever outcome, you've already received our support to move forward. And what I would like is just that come back to city council so we can discuss the results of that and decide if that changes anything, in addition to not just the traffic study, but any other alternative. We've only been presented with one option, which is widening, and the community's been very forceful in saying that they do not want that option. And so I think that puts us in a situation of, if some members of council feel like they're going to vote to support that, we should give all of that data back.
Well, I think it says right here in the letter that they'll be hosting public informational meetings in the spring of 2023. So I'm assuming you'll go, I'll be there. We can have meetings, discuss it afterwards on our own, or what we heard. There's nothing that stops us from doing that. And issuing, based on what we heard, we can issue a letter saying, these are things we like, things we dislike. I've never heard them say, unless somebody else had heard differently, that that this was a one and done, that with that we would be out of the process after this is done. What I heard them say, they've stood up here on several different occasions and talked about wanting to be partners with us and going forth. So I'm going to take them at their word, and I think we should hold them to that.
I think there's a good faith effort to partner with the city and to do that, but I also think we have the protection piece as representatives of our constituents to make sure that those processes are adhered to. And, you know, I know when we've had the city weigh in on things at the State House that sometimes city staff does it because city staff feels it's appropriate, and that times where counselors have gone to be supportive of constituent issues, that has often needed to come through council. And so I want to be really thoughtful about the process we use and speaking with a united voice on the priorities of Concord.
Your Honor.
Councilman Goodrich.
Thank you, sir. The project in and of itself for the discussion in the community for the widening of I-93 is now 30 years in the making. I would say what the DOT is presenting to us is probably the best progress that we have made in representing what the community wants on their project than I've seen in the 30 years participating in these conversations. I don't see this letter to the commissioner as being something that ties the city of Concord to the actual widening of their project for this one sentence that says the city requests that the DOT evaluate the reduction of the interstate's footprint and number of lanes associated therewithin while still meeting the purpose and need of the project. We're asking them to state and prove the purpose and need of the project. All they've asked us to do is, hey, this is what we're recommending. They are bound by context-sensitive solutions and those impacts that it has to a community. They can't move anything forward without this stage that at least says, okay, investigate F. That's all we're saying, investigate F. And while you're at it, update your traffic stuff. I don't think it ties us to approving the widening of the project so much as all these other elements that come along with it that actually are concessions that help our community.
So there is a paragraph in the letter, next to last paragraph, that does talk about how the Federal Highway did a time extension to complete the preliminary design by December 31st, 2023. That's a year from now. And they were hoping the city would reach some consensus on a proposed to update the alternatives and complete preliminary design and the environmental assessment. Upon completion of the preliminary design, the department can begin final design and right-of-way acquisitions in 2024 and beginning addressing the priorities that they go out. So, I mean, I think that you got a whole year of where you're going to have back and forth between the community and the state and at public hearings and otherwise. Am I reading that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Councilor Pierce.
Just a quick recap so I understand it. This is the DOT asking us for what we think. This is what this letter is saying. We want you to look at these things.
Exactly.
And it's non-binding. It just come back with a plan and take this into consideration.
I think that's a good summary.
Yep.
That's right, sorry.
If I may then, maybe we just strike the words expresses its support from the second paragraph and just give our recommendations.
Which page?
Page 1, second paragraph.
Oh, we're going back. Sorry.
This is the part related. I'm just not in the habit of saying I support something if I haven't gotten all the information.
I could not be more in support of moving those tracks that the state is going to pay for so that we can make the Store Street extension over to 393. I am 100% in support of that. I am 100% in support of adding an additional turn lane off of exit 13. I've seen the backups there. It is extremely dangerous on the highway when people start stacking up in the morning. That needs to be corrected. The fact that the state is willing to pay for as part of their project the turn lanes through 393. We know that Manchester Street is going to see tremendous growth over the next several years between Pitco between the
Mazda.
the
Pony.
Pony Mazda, the new project over the Black Hill.
Black Walk Trail.
Thank you. We know there's going to be significant improvements to that street, and the number of traffic is going to be additionally added over to that area. So I understand what you're saying about, is there everything in this project in this letter that I agree with? No, absolutely not. There's things that I disagree with. I tried to put them in here because I thought that that's what I heard from the community, and that's what I was trying to include. So I have no problem with the word support because there are things in here which I strongly, strongly support. Councilor Sutton.
Thank you. And maybe we'll just cut to the chase on it, because I think throughout the whole process, and I sit on Transportation Policy Advisory Committee, the committee has largely been aligned along most of the issues, other than a couple small things here and there in widening. So you're saying you're mostly in support. Are you in support or opposition to widening the highway? Like, I think that's what it comes down to, right?
I think
Where's your position?
I think it depends. For instance, I think that the interchange between 15 and 14 going south is extremely dangerous, and I think that needs to be addressed. 100% needs to be addressed. Do I think it needs to be 8 lanes? No, absolutely not. Do I think it should be minimized as much as possible? Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I tried to capture, saying in that paragraph, that you got to do the study, you got to minimize it, you've got to blah blah blah.
I'll let somebody else. I'll just finish that. In all the years I've ever given testimony or written things for my personal capacity or professional, I've never given wholesale, I support or oppose, if I actually am just giving information and haven't decided whether I support or oppose all those things. So that's
It's
where
up
I'm
to
at on
group.
it.
What would you like to do?
I think we leave it in.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just say that I fully understand Councilor Rice Hawkins' concerns and your suggestion. I'm not hearing any additional support around the table for making a change. I'm comfortable with the way it is, and I suggest we move on.
Your Honor, I would just like to thank Sandra Rice Hawkins for her calm testimony. I completely agree that I think it is misleading to say that you express its support when clearly here you have just said there's some things you don't support in this. I do like that. Just say we have these recommendations. I completely agree with that, and I thank you for offering that as a suggestion.
Well, I did try to clarify and say, and offer the following requested modifications. So there you go. That's why.
Upon which the city's support is predicated upon.
Right.
But does not require that study to come back to us for evaluation.
Well, but I guess.
You're a lawyer. You were
Sure. No, so I think this is just the first step in the process for us to provide input, because they need to get to a point where they've got something that they can take back to the community based on the input that we've provided. It says in their letter it's going to be spring 2023. I don't know if it's going to be at this point. That's up to them. But I do think, this is our opportunity to provide input. I support, do I support everything that's in here? No, probably not. But I support the project in general, and there are certain aspects of it that I think are great. I support providing our feedback to them about like the traffic study. The fact that we don't have an updated traffic study, I agree, that's problematic. But I think the language that we're pointing out is, okay, we have concerns about the widening based on what the community is saying. If they have a traffic study that comes out and shows why specifically we need to have, 3 lanes going north and 4 lanes going south, I'm not really going to be in a position to contest it if the numbers bear that out. I have no idea if they will or they won't. At the end of the day, I'm not a design professional, so I'm not really in a position to do that. What I am in a position to do is to pull together the feedback that we've gotten and the things that we really care about and provide that input for them to consider. And I think the letter, does that, and I'm comfortable with it.
Would it be appropriate to ask DOT that if we left this wording in there like it was, that they would be running down the road waving this document saying the city of Concord supports everything we want to do?
Ask them.
Would you take it to mean that, gentlemen, that that if we left the words in here, that the words of support, that you would take that as a de facto, we support everything that's in here?
No, there's a number of items in the letter that the mayor has proposed that we need to address. We've got at least 2 more public information before we come to the public hearing, and we're gonna have that opportunity for comment. But I think the big thing that I think everybody wants to hear now is, we're gonna update the traffic modeling, we're gonna update the reports. We've got to certainly brainstorm a minimum build or a no widening approach, and we're gonna bring that back to you. I think that's what the public informational meetings will be in the spring, in order to kind of answer some of those questions. But I think what we want here tonight is the city of Concord willing to kind of support the general initiative, so that we can feel comfortable that when we go to a public hearing, that we've got general consensus moving forward. The city of Concord right now doesn't feel like we have general consensus, and it doesn't make sense moving forward.
All right, thank you.
I would just like to thank Jason Ayotte for saying that. I do appreciate that. And Councilor Fennessy, because I think we do need to have that information before we can put our support behind that. I love data. I would like to see those reports to see if it is truly necessary, because right now I'm just basing it off testimony from my constituents. But if the data says otherwise, then I can go to my constituents and say that.
Somebody else have the hand up?
Oh, I have my hand up, but
Sorry, Councilor.
I don't know if I need to bloviate any more than anybody else. I appreciate Councilor Rice Hawkins, Councilor Rice Hawkins' concerns and those expressed by Councilor Brown. But I support this. I support the wording. I think that we're trying to move this project down the line. We're trying to get to the next step. And I think that the language is appropriate for that. I frankly am very impressed with how much of what we've heard is actually in this document. We heard an awful lot of testimony. Not everyone's going to agree. Yes, I know that there are folks, including at this table, who just think we shouldn't do any widening at all. On the other hand, it's interesting to note that in tonight's agenda, we have the minutes from the Traffic Operations Committee, where they had a resident, express concern that there was about the levels of traffic on Mountain Road. And the committee unanimously agreed that that would be solved by the widening of I-93.
If I may, the committee did not. That's not a statement from the committee. It's a statement from staff. And I only say that to clarify the record there.
All right, I'm just looking at it saying that you were there, so I will not question you. It says the committee agreed that this was the ultimate solution.
So just for clarification for folks, and this is not meant to be disparaging or,
We've disparaged all night long.
The city's official response to folks, for traffic on Mountain Road or others, has typically been to advocate for the I-93 widening. As the Ward 10 constituent, I have had far more Ward 10 constituents oppose the widening than support it, which has been a very interesting situation. And I trust a lot of our staff's analysis and concern. So that is why I want to make sure we've done our due diligence in all of the pieces of this project, which we all agree is a major undertaking for our city.
It is your ward.
Thank you.
But it's all right. But in any case, I feel we really need to move this forward. And I'll make a motion. Well, I'm sorry, we haven't gone through the entire, I'm not going to make a motion because we haven't gone through the last part of it. Believe it or not, we're still not to the end of the last page.
We generally are. The deck park is pretty general language.
And that's already been done, yeah. So I'll make a motion that we approve the letter with the changes that have been discussed.
So the 2 changes I had were under the exit 13 to add the issues around lighting, and both around the intersection and under the bridge. And then the second change I had was to further clarify landscaping for more specific types when we talk about exit 14.
And do we want that too with 15?
Yes.
What was that, Nathan?
Do we want that as well with 15?
I tried to.
As it transitions to the...
Yes.
I tried to say that.
Needs to be consistency.
So I said intersection improvements that would beautify this important gateway into the city. Is that enough, or?
I'm asking
I don't know, I
Councilor
don't think it
McNamara.
is. Your idea of beautifying mine might be something totally different. Might be a blue umbrella.
Want to do palm trees?
Plastic
Plastic.
trees.
Inflatable.
All right, so I will, okay, so you're making a motion that would approve the letter with 3 changes. The lighting under the bridge at exits 14, 13, and the intersection around there. Expound upon the landscaping for around exit 14, and to add some clarity to exit 15 beautification, and that entryway in the city. Is that, Councilor Champlin, is that what I hear?
That is what you heard.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Councilor Todd, second to that. Now we're up for discussion. Councilor Brown.
Thank you. I'd like to amend that motion to remove the words in the second paragraph, expresses its support for the project.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, so let's take that up first. Do you want to leave it in or take it out? The motion is to take it out. You've had plenty of discussion. All those in favor of taking out, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
And motion fails. Okay, so we're back to the original motion. Is there any other thing further?
I just have a housekeeping
Credit.
thing, Your Honor.
Sure.
You've done a great job typing this up. Can you make sure the city clerk gets it so it goes on 5 pages instead of 6? Just because there's only a small portion and
should
it's
beautify
margins. And
this.
you've done a great job, but I gotta tell you, it's driving me nuts. Driving me nuts.
Probably should check for a spelling typo.
Yes,
too.
please.
So you want to get rid of sincerely, James?
It's just, I tell you, I keep flipping and there's nothing there, and we would never send a letter like this, an official letter, never. I apologize, it's driving me
Finished it
nuts.
at about 3:30 this afternoon.
All right, Judd, you've done well, sir.
All right, anything else? Ready for the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion's adopted. Okay, that concludes item 35. We have no new business, we have no unfinished business, we have one item that's been removed from the consent. Madam Clerk?
Yes, it was item 29, pulled from the consent agenda by Councilor Brown. It is Mayor Boulet's proposed appointments to an ad hoc Beaver Meadow Building Committee. The appointees would be Councilor Fennessy, Councilor Bouchard, Councilor Kretovic, Mark Cohen, Tom Croto, Linda Matledge, Christopher Mulavy, and Naomi Werwell?
Werewolf.
Werwell, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Brown?
Thank you. I simply do not, as the appointments say, that like to suspend the rules so that they may be nominated tonight. I don't wish to suspend the rules. I believe there should be more time. We've heard about Pennacook Services, the library, the senior center that's closing down, and they're shrinking, the space where Pennacook residents can gather. And this group, there are no Pennacook residents of those 8. And I would think that it would be important, as this has been listed as a community space and imagining this Beaver Meadow facility 50 years into the future, that we would want someone from Pennacook on this committee, because there is going to be a lot of housing and there are going to be more people. And I would think that this community space, we would want that input from someone from Pennacook. And also, I don't know if folks realized it, but the very first time I sat in this seat was about a year ago, when we had the real training, the race equity leadership training. And I think it's really important that we have members of our BIPOC community and those communities that are not represented to be to be at the table when we are talking about designing a facility that's going to be used 50 years into the future. And I don't think the committee needs to be larger. I think 8 is large enough. And the golf committee is the largest committee in Concord already, and this is a second committee. But I don't see anyone from the community or from communities that are not currently represented, and I think that's really important. And we just received this 10 days ago, and in those 10 days I have talked to other members who really are interested in creating a space where everyone can gather. We heard from Visto, and I just would like to read this. I just met this gentleman yesterday, and I said, hey, would you like to be on a committee? And he immediately sent me this. And so I want to hold off on that because I would like to, just 1 minute to describe this person who would like to serve on a committee and I think would be ideal for this committee. His name is Charles M. Rushamisha, born in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Charles grew up in Congo, Rwanda, and the United States of America. He arrived in the U.S. in 2005 and first settled in Portland, Maine. During his first years in the States as a first-generation immigrant, Charles learned English along the way and worked several jobs. Charles is no stranger to hard work and dreaming big. His goal was to one day graduate from college. He went on to a 6-year college career from 2010 to 2016. He earned a master's degree in engineering from the University of Oklahoma. Charles then went from college to the corporate world and has been working for several years as a technical professional for Halliburton Energy Services. Due to the demanding nature of the job, always traveling and being away from his family, and the negative impact on the environment, extensive hydraulic fracturing operations, Charles decided to change to a more life-altering career, helping the elderly and disabled individuals. Charles would love to be more involved in other activities that benefit his community, the New Americans, and that of Greater Concord. And Charles lives on Clinton Street, but he welcomed the opportunity to be part of a committee and where this building is looking at where do we want to be in 50 years? What do we want this facility to look like? And it's, 3 times the size that it is now. It's going to, I know you talk about private-public partnerships, and we're looking at the Golf Association being housed in this. Why can't we have a member of the community that is not currently represented also advocating for space that the community might use? And there are immigrants and refugees that do live close by. So this is why I would like to hold off on this, because I think we should consider not just pulling from the same pool of people. Of these 8, 5 of them are from the Beaver Meadow Golf Course Advisory Committee. And if this is going to be a facility that serves the community, I think we need to expand beyond just that small pool of people.
Thank you very much. Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. So I worked with Mr. LeBrun and the mayor in part to pull together some of the people for this, and we went through and there were particular reasons why we identified some of these people to help us out. So Councilor Bouchard obviously had experience with the citywide community center, so we wanted to rely upon her to provide some help in trying to conceptualize what those spaces would be and how it would impact the Beaver Meadow community to have this community space. Councilor Kretovic, obviously from the ward, is on the golf committee, is a user of Beaver Meadow, so she had that perspective. Mark Cohen is a former city councilor, sat around here. Somebody took his seat who will go unnamed and has been a longtime member of the Beaver Meadow Advisory Committee.
It's Nate.
It's me. It's me. So he's on it. Tom Croto is someone who's lived in the Beaver Meadow community for a long time. He's not a golfer. We thought it was important to have somebody in the community who could speak to things like, the space for an election, space for community events. He's had a long history of volunteering in the city. He was on the school district charter commission. He previously served on the school board for many years. So we thought he'd have a great voice. Linda Matledge is a member of the Beaver Meadow Advisory Committee and has been for some time. Chris Malevy is the chair of the Beaver Meadow Advisory Committee. He is a professional engineer, so we thought he would have great insight as to actually, as we talk about design, someone who has practical knowledge of actually the engineering behind it and the structure. And then Noemi Warewell, who is now the person who's running the Bill Koch Ski League and has been for the last couple of years, so we can have some input as to how that space would impact the cross-country skiing. So that was sort of what we were thinking as we put together the committee. Obviously, if there were other people who were interested, I can tell you there were a couple other areas we were looking for people, and we didn't necessarily, we're not able to identify additional people, but we think this is a pretty good committee to start working through. And as far as the issue about timing, we've got an RFQ that I think is ready to go, and part of the push to get this committee formed and hopefully meeting sometime next month is that they can look at the RFQ to go out to start identifying a consulting engineer.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just add, like Linda Matledge, beyond being a longtime member of the Golf Advisory Committee, she sits on that committee as a representative of women's golf at the golf course. She is heavily involved with the Beaver Meadow Women's Golf Association, which is one of the few remaining women's golf associations at golf clubs that remain in the state of New Hampshire. She also is deeply involved in both the Women's Wednesday Night League as well as the Thursday Morning League. As Councilor Brown pointed out, there are a number of new Americans that live in the area. There are many that live right next door to the golf course, and they already have an open door policy, talking with our neighbors. To Phil Davis, our pro, as well as Mr. LeBrun, whenever there are issues regarding the golf course. We did also look at other members of the golf course that are participant that do come from other backgrounds, and it was obligations that they have to their work that is preventing them from being recommended for this, but they've also been asked to engage highly because they are users of the golf course facilities in the summer, in the winter, for all recreational uses. It's not a closed-door process, it's an open process, and it's open to anybody to participate in.
Anybody else? Councilor McNamara.
I do appreciate that. It sounds like you really looked at individuals who had great assets to bring to this group. I think sometimes, I at one point was new to the city, and I think that sometimes we forget that fresh eyes, someone who doesn't have all these wonderful skills, but may have some other skills, it's okay to bring somebody on who doesn't have the high assets or huge list of qualifications that some of the people you chose, just because it's a new set of eyes, fresh set of eyes. I think we need to think about that sometimes. I think we do.
Councilor Pierce.
Thank you. And the goal of this committee is to, as Councilor Fennessy said, get a RFQ, get out there, and none of this, it's not like they're gonna come back with a building that's already started to be built, correct? There's a process you go through, there's a whole, so everyone should feel comfortable that this isn't giving carte blanche to a committee to go out and build a big house at the golf course.
Councilor Rice-Hawkins.
Thank you. I'd be comfortable waiting and seeing if we can get a new mix of folks. I think we heard earlier tonight that there are some community center gatherings and potential with the Boys and Girls Club and the public library, but we've also heard the clubhouse referred to as a community center. I'd like to make sure that we are being thoughtful and merging those ideas and the programs that are no longer available that were run previously in Pinnacook have a place to land, and that's been sorted out. I think the community representation piece could be stronger here, and I appreciate very much Councilor Fennessy going through the list of individuals and how they got onto the list. I would say that that is a tenet of being connected already. And one of the things that we struggle with is bringing in new people and offering opportunities and ideas. So I would like to renew my request that City Council consider doing things like tabling together at community events. Councilor Brown and I have been doing that, and that's how we found some of these contacts and leads, that we advertise committee positions so that, similar to other communities, that there is actually a form, an intake form, and some active recruitment so that people know, there's a form to fill out and an option, and that we consider city staff using those resources to help identify other individuals who'd like to be involved in our city. Because otherwise, there's no surprise to me that we have such an overlap of current golf course advisory club members on the subcommittee, partly because of the building, but partly because you get put on several committees, and we have several committees across the state that have the same individuals on them. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, what's being lost, we are looking at building a Beaver Meadow clubhouse, and I think sometimes our language we're not looking to build a community center. We're a community space that will be within the clubhouse, but we're not looking to build a community center that will be having programming like we see up on the Heights. But we are looking at using this space at the new Beaver Meadow Clubhouse as maybe community space where other activities can happen. Second of all, I think it's great that you're doing the tabling, but when you're doing the tabling and someone such as that resident says, I'd like to serve on the committee, do you then tell them the process of how you perhaps give that same letter to the city clerk applying for or asking to be on one of our over 50 advisory committees? We have, as you know, we have over 50. And are you, saying, look what we have open, and in doing that, instead of bringing a letter here and reading it, did you also suggest to these people that they follow the process? And we have a process, and we're very open about it.
Yes, absolutely. I do that every time. It's just that this came up. We just received this 10 days ago. So, we received the notification of the building committee 10 days ago. I received his letter this morning, and during this council meeting, I received a text from someone else that I spoke to yesterday asking if she would be interested in serving on a committee, and she said, yes, what do you need? What do you need? Because, and actually, some folks here might know her. Her name is Irene Kagugu. She is on the Leadership Greater Concord right now, and she's in her 20s, and I think this is exciting and wonderful. I'd just like to ask Councilor Fennessy, what is the youngest age of the person currently on that committee?
Might be me.
And how old are you?
That's not appropriate. That's so inappropriate.
Well,
Yes.
why, the reason I'm asking
And
is
I don't have a library card either.
What?
You a member?
The reason that I'm asking the age is that this clubhouse/community center.
Not a community center.
Okay,
I think
well, thank you for clarifying that, because when the first subcommittee got together, I believe the mayor had said, imagine this 50 years from now. So doesn't it make sense to have someone on the committee who will be here 50 years from now?
Oh, Nate, you poor thing.
So, are you suggesting I won't be here in 50 years?
Sorry.
Don't step
can I-
up on the bus.
Move the question?
Actually, no. So, yeah, we've had plenty of discussion, and we do have a motion to move the discussion.
And a second.
It's been second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Nay.
Motion moved. We do not have a question before us, so somebody want to move that?
I move, well, I'm on it.
But I thought we did just vote on the motion.
No, we actually, I screwed up, okay?
So I moved
What
to
do you want me to
first
say?
was the first.
At 10:25.
Approval
Shock, I
of
made a mistake.
item 29.
Second.
Bottom line is, we had no motion pending for us. But we have two people
Approval of
want to
item
end debate,
29.
get it going.
Got
So,
it.
Point of order.
sure.
Can counselors who are being appointed vote on it?
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
I'm just, Councilor Greg Sexton moved approval.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Nyan. So the only thing I would add is, look, Councilor Fennessy, answer me just a question. So these are open meetings, correct?
Yes, they are.
And do you intend to hold public outreach sessions?
Yes.
And will you make sure that they're held in a place that is accessible to everyone? In other words, don't just hold them at the location. Can we hold them elsewhere in the community so that everyone gets an opportunity to participate if they wish?
I would be more than happy to do that.
All right. Will you have public input at each of your meetings?
Yes.
Perfect. Anybody else have any questions? Councilor Rice Hawkins.
I would encourage folks to take a look at the past statements around the clubhouse, because I think there is some disagreement or misunderstanding about the community aspect, which has been brought up several times in support of it. So I just want to encourage us all to take a look back through those notes. Thank you.
Your Honor?
Yeah.
If I may address this. This was part of the discussion that the community had when we were talking about the community center up on the Heights, that there would come a time when there needed to be a community anchor on the west side of the city. This opportunity that the original committee looked at when they were doing the assessment of the current clubhouse was that it's not meeting the needs of the current uses at the golf course, meaning not only is it not meeting the needs of the membership of the golf course, it's not meeting the membership of the users during the winter time. So the idea of a community center or something more accessible to the community was more towards the year-round operations that we had there. Now, in those original conversations that we had with regards to the condition of the building and the initial outreach that we had, because again, there was public meetings, there was a segment of the community that used the tennis courts over at Beaver Meadow, the tennis courts by the baseball fields. They have been asking for pickleball courts. They came and they spoke to us and they asked about, hey, is there a possibility to do pickleball courts here? Which is very different than tennis courts. They're modifying those tennis courts for their uses, and it is one of the highest use pickleball courts in the area that we have. And we said, sure, of course we can have that conversation. So it is the community that's driving the conversation about opportunities that can be at this facility. Ultimately, it's still a golf course. The fact that it is a golf course is, it is part of our land conservation grants that we have. It's going to be a golf course. So that is the primary purpose. The secondary purpose is our winter operations. And then thirdly, it would be what else the community can bring to the table for us to discuss. As far as the library being down the road from us now at Rolfe Park, that's only a benefit to what we now add to this area of the city.
Okay, we're Councilor
I was
Fennessy.
going to say one thing. All of these things are part of what the committee's intended to do, is discuss what is it that we want, and if we're going to do something, what does the design look like? So I think everybody has different ideas about what we should be looking at.
Will there be cookies?
If you come, I'll make sure they're cookies.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion that we remove one member and replace that member with Charles Rashmisha.
What?
Councilor Pierce?
Isn't the item, didn't we already vote on the item?
No, not yet.
So
Okay.
it needs a second.
Is there a second?
I'll second to have a vote. I have no information other than what was just shared here on any of these individuals. So.
I think that also the mayor makes the appointments and recommends them to us, and so it's out of process. Sorry, Your Honor, I spoke out of process.
No, there's a vote. There's a reason we have a vote.
Take input. You notice you went through these, you'll see that everyone's got some appointment in there.
Your Honor, I just have to say, I'm pained to say this. I think that we're doing Mr. Rugamusha a huge disservice by putting his name on this and making this look like it's a vote for or against him. That puts him in an incredibly embarrassing and awkward position. Yes, it does, Counselor. Yes, it does. You've thrown two people's names out here. I have no idea whether they want their names out here.
And the fact of the matter is that I understand what you're trying, I understand your goal, and I fully support the goal of diversifying our city committees. But to throw somebody's name out like this and to have us vote on this as if we're voting on this individual when we're not, because we haven't, you've read something off about him, you know, that's all we know. I just feel embarrassed for the individual, and I feel very awkward making this vote.
I want to know who you want to remove.
I would say the oldest individual on there.
Oh, my.
I guess. And I would like to say that I asked Mr. Rushmisha if I could read his paragraph, his statements.
Okay, enough. Councilor Rice-Hawkins.
Thank you. This is why it would be good to just hold on this item for a month. We also don't have any information on any of the other individuals except for who we personally know. And so while I appreciate Councilor Fennessy sharing that, I do think as a policy that whenever there's recommendations for committees that we should have the background or why that individual is being recommended for a position, just as a matter of policy, because otherwise it is just a name on a piece of paper and relies on you to know that individual. For the purposes of moving us on tonight, I'm going to rescind my second. We're going to move on. We already know what the vote's going to be.
We do? Are you counting votes around the table? Thank you.
Or I can keep my second and we can stay here.
Let's talk.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I think a point well taken, Councilor Fennessy made earlier, and as we all know, that all these committees are open to the public, and that Councilor Fennessy, I think he may have even promised, maybe if I heard him wrong, but maybe even one of these meetings will be in Pennacook. So in other words, there's plenty of opportunity, from my understanding, for the public to be involved in this. And you can be involved in this process without having to actually sit on the committee. And I know that because that's how I started off in Concord, long before I was councilor. I just sat in and participated that way. So I think that it's important to have the business of this committee move forward. I've heard that there's a timetable. They need to move things forward. I'm not really feeling comfortable holding that up. When there are other opportunities, and my suggestion is that there isn't a limit as to the number of people that can be on a committee. Am I correct in that, I assume? So my opinion is to, as Councilor Bouchard, Mayor Pro Tem Bouchard mentioned earlier, to have this individual apply as anyone else would. And then if, it'll be up to the mayor to make the appointment, and then that person can join the committee. So that goes for anybody, so.
Right. Yeah, people who want to participate, please have them contact Janice or myself. And you'll notice that there are appointments that you all approved tonight that went through exactly that process.
Point of clarification.
Sure.
By ordinance, there actually are limitations on some of the committees, so I just.
But not this one.
Yeah.
But yes, some are, some are not. Okay, with that, we do have a motion to be seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Can you read the motion, please?
Motion's to approve the item.
Item 29.
I thought there was a second to the motion to amend the.
And suspend the item.
The
Councilor Rice-Hawkins, did you rescind your second?
I did, yeah, let's move forward.
She rescinded her second.
My apologies. She rescinded her second.
Sorry. Okay. Everybody clear the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
The ayes have it. Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions they want to make? Let's go this way if you don't mind. Or actually, let's go this way.
Yeah, go.
No, go ahead. Go first.
Thank you. My comment is about the culture on this council, and I just want to note that this is not the first time I've brought up this issue, either in council or in direct conversations with some individuals, but it's uncomfortable to me that when Councilor Brown speaks and is energetic in her statements, that she's chastised, but when Councilor Kretovic speaks and is excited in her statements, it's okay. I'm not comfortable with the idea that when we bring minutes forward to be amended in the regular process, that we're told that we are not supposed to, that we should have done that in advance when the process is to do it at the table. Yet the mayor, and I appreciated the document, but can drop a document on our desk 5 minutes before we start the discussion, and that is not questioned. I say these things because there should not be a double standard in serving on Concord City Council, and I would implore my colleagues to be thoughtful about that as we move forward. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I had something quick and actually positive. Beaver Meadow Golf Course was recently named by the New England Nordic Ski Association the location that they're going to be holding their Learn to Ski event coming up on February 5th. It's a Sunday, 2023. This is huge. The short time that we have been doing our winter operations here for the cross-country skiing and for the ice skating to be named at such a New England-wide event, to have such draw that's going to be coming from Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine, obviously New Hampshire, Vermont, and portions of New York is incredible. And we are hugely honored to have this named. And we're super proud of the BEAV committee for helping to bring this message about what we offer for our winter operations beyond our borders of the city of Concord and out to the greater New England area. Thanks. I hope you can come and learn to ski.
Council Brown?
Sure, thank you. Since we're not going to be meeting here again until next year, I'd just like to wish my colleagues around the table happy holidays. And also, I'm a new member of the VFW Post 1631 here in Concord. And I'd like to say to anyone who has served and was honorably discharged to check their DD 214. If you received hostile fire or imminent danger pay, you are eligible to join VFW. And for those that don't know, VFW is the Veterans of Foreign Wars. It's an organization devoted to veterans. It's a great place to find camaraderie, promotes civic responsibility, patriotism, and also supports youth and local programs. Thank you.
I am also a member of the VFW Auxiliary for 20 years.
Outstanding.
Anybody else? Councilor Sexton.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to express my deep gratitude to the Concord Police Department and to all of the responding agencies last Thursday at the active shooter hoax. I don't really have the words to express what it feels like as a parent to receive notification that there's an active shooter situation at your kid's school, but knowing that the Concord Police Department and all of the agencies in the area are prepared and willing to put their own lives at risk to save your kids is something that helps you sleep a little bit better. So, with a lot of gratitude.
Thank you. Well said. Anyone else? Mr. Manager, do you have anything?
Nothing to add, John.
Okay, can I motion to adjourn?
So moved.
To adjourn.
Seconded? Motion made, seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.